Chapter 76. 2 years ago, let alone Class 2 Creation Masters, Wuxia had even seen plenty of Class 3 Creation Masters. He had even seen one of the 3 Class 5 Creation Masters, the Bamboo Monarch. But now, when he wore the Class 2 Creation Master's retainer crest on his left chest, Wuxia felt as though it was emitting heat. It was so heavy that his heart was boiling. When he looked at the small shield beside the 2 stars on the crest, Wuxia knew his responsibility for the rest of his life. After parting with Wuxia, Lin Yuan immediately returned to the Xia region. He was truly a little worried about Chimey being at home alone. Even if Chimey was a bronze fae, Lin Yuan was still afraid that something might happen to it at home. Ever since Lin Yuan had brought Chimey home, this should be the longest period of time that he had been away from Chimey. Lin Yuan returned to the fae store. When he opened the door, Chimey immediately flew onto Lin Yuan's shoulder when it heard the sound. It then jumped onto Lin Yuan's ear and rubbed its little head against Lin Yuan's hair to express its longing. After not seeing Lin Yuan for such a long time, Chimey missed him terribly. It wasn't even in the mood for a live broadcast, causing Chimey's fans to riot. Chimey had a lot of fans now, and none of the Starweb's music hosts could compete with it. Before Lin Yuan could comfort Chimey, he suddenly saw the shelves in the room collapsing on the ground in a mess. The wooden parts were broken into pieces, and the iron parts were twisted beyond recognition. Previously, Red Thorn was more than half a meter tall. When it evolved to the elite rank, it directly jumped to 1.5 meters. This was just the height of the mouth of Relinquish. At that moment, the mouth of Relinquish was like a sphere filled with wrinkles and thorns. The thorns had several mouths and the dense teeth were exposed. When the rose-shaped digestive cavity had evolved to normal, it had already undergone a metamorphosis. Now it had grown another 8 organs that were similar to the previous 2 organs, forming a circle of 10. They shrouded the outer layer of the mouth of Relinquish. The roses on the top were the size of a wash basin and looked very demonic. Lin Yuan sensed the changes in the source seed's data. If these 10 flowers were to attack, each flower would instantly spray nearly 5 kilograms of acid. The acid's intensity could even corrode gravel and soil. As for the thorny vines that Red Thorn had previously enhanced, the inner vines were now covered with 5-centimeter-long spikes. There were a total of 16 of them and they could reach up to 4 meters. When it moved, it could probably tear the opponent into pieces in an instant. Vines up to 6 meters long grew out from the periphery. These vines were the newly grown parts. It didn't seem to be as lethal as the vines in the inner layer. The emerald green vines were covered with 3-centimeter-long barbs. Furthermore, these vines could grow in length during battle. Looking at Red Thorn's new elite skill, Shatter Armor Rip, Lin Yuan felt that Red Thorn had really evolved into a fae with extremely powerful attacks. Whether it was the 3-centimeter-long spiky barbs on the outer layer of the vines or the 5-centimeter-long spiky barbs on the inner layer of the vines. When it was brandished, it would have the armor-shattering effect. Even a defense-type fae would have its flesh lacerated after a few whips. Not to mention that the spikes were barbed in shape. When the vines pulled, they would tear off a piece of flesh. After evolving to elite grade, the source seed Red Thorn already had intelligence. After forming a blood contract with Lin Yuan, Red Thorn had a blood-related closeness to Lin Yuan. Red Thorn extended a vine from the inner layer. This vine was similar to the other vines in the inner layer, but it didn't have spikes. When this vine wrapped around Lin Yuan's wrist, Lin Yuan could clearly feel Red Thorn's intimate emotions. It felt like it was acting coquettishly. Lin Yuan could vaguely feel Red Thorn's thoughts. It felt like when Red Thorn evolved to elite grade and gained intelligence, it had specially evolved a vine so that it could get closer to him. When Red Thorn felt Lin Yuan by its side, it carried a kind of joyful emotion. This kind of emotion quickly infected Lin Yuan. When looking at Red Thorn, Genius, Chimey, and Morbius on his wrist, Lin Yuan felt especially fulfilled. There wasn't any trace of fear in front of the unknown. The more he looked forward to it, the more he had to travel through hardships. After Lin Yuan helped Red Thorn prepare the bronze alien insect flesh, he went on the star web. Lin Yuan was rather apologetic for standing Big Sister Xian up. At the same time, Lin Yuan felt rather regretful that he didn't pick up anything valuable. Right now, Lin Yuan was planning to purchase some inferior energy ores in bulk. Firstly, after nurturing several batches of spirit siphon goldfish, including the 5 fortune ranches, the eggs produced by the female spirit siphon goldfish were almost used up. Secondly, Lin Yuan needed a large amount of pure spirit chi to heal the insect queen. In fact, Lin Yuan didn't think that the insect queen's injuries were difficult to heal. He just needed to provide a large amount of pure spirit chi to keep up with the insect queen's consumption. Given the Insect Queen's recovery ability, if there was a sufficient supply of spirit qi, it would only need a short period of time to recover. This time Lin Yuan didn't send a message to Big Sister Xian. Instead he went to her store. When Lin Yuan arrived at Big Sister Xian's store, he saw that she was inside and quickly went forward. Big Sister Xian, I have been busy for the past 2 days, so I didn't make it to the appointment yesterday to pick the phase with damaged roots. Zhou Jiesin was looking at the bills in the store, and when she saw Lin Yuan, she quickly stood up. Zhou Jiesin had thought about Lin Yuan's absence yesterday. After sending a message to Lin Yuan, she didn't receive any response. After weighing the pros and cons, Zhou Jiesin hardened her heart and only sold a portion of the phase that had arrived yesterday. She kept the best ones. She was thinking that when Lin Yuan came over, there would still be goods for Lin Yuan to pick. Zhou Jiesin was a person who dared to think and act. Since she was certain that Lin Yuan had a creation master backing him, before Lin Yuan clearly expressed his attitude, Zhou Jiesin would do everything that needed to be done. When she was looking at the bills, Zhou Jiesin was rather absent-minded. Now that Lin Yuan came to the store, Zhou Jiesin's heart was completely at ease. When she stood up and didn't look, Zhou Jiesin immediately saw the Class 2 Creation Master crest that Lin Yuan was wearing. Zhou Jiesin had a rather good understanding of Creation Masters. Lin Yuan was such a young Class 2 Creation Master, and it was obvious that there was a problem. Zhou Jiesin couldn't even imagine that Lin Yuan had the resources behind him. Even if Lin Yuan didn't have any resources behind him, a young Class 2 Creation Master like him was worth Zhou Jiesin trying her best to rope him in. Chapter 77. Zhou Jiesin's words astonished Lin Yuan. It was extremely difficult to store a severely injured Fei. Once the Fei died, the price would drop by more than 10%. Zhou Jiesin wouldn't normally do business like this. If that was the case, it would be a loss for her to sell severely injured Feis. There shouldn't be any Creation Masters in Zhou Jiesin's store. Even if there were Creation Masters, it would be a loss to waste a Creation Master's time to sustain a severely injured Fei. It was obvious that Zhou Jiesin was doing this because of him. Regardless of the reason, Lin Yuan had to accept this favor. Then I shall thank Big Sister Xian for leaving behind a few severely injured Feis for me. After Morbius evolved to bronze grade, Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone wasn't small anymore. Coupled with the pure land of bliss and the high concentration of spirit qi, it was extremely suitable for healing Feis with damaged roots. The price of a Fei with damaged roots was only a little higher than the spiritual ingredient itself. It was unknown how much lower it was than a healthy Fei. If Lin Yuan were to purchase such Feis, treat them and sell them, the money he could earn would be far more than what he could earn now. Lin Yuan didn't just need to nurture Red Thorn. He also needed a large amount of dimensional lifeform flesh. He also needed to make more preparations for the Jasmine Lily's evolution to legend. Lin Yuan had an appointment with the violent-tempered woman, and he would be able to obtain the revival soil in a few days. Lin Yuan still didn't have the 2 mahogany tree cores and 1 liter of grasswood spring water. He might be able to buy the grasswood spring water on the market, but 1 liter of grasswood spring water was rather expensive. Therefore, the accumulation of resources was still Lin Yuan's top priority. This was because the accumulation of resources was also equivalent to an increase in strength. When Zhou Jiesin heard Lin Yuan expressing his gratitude, the smile on her face grew even brighter. It wasn't that Zhou Jiesin hadn't taken some measures to attract customers before. However, if these measures were to be effective, the customers would have to accept the favor. If no matter how much you did, the customers wouldn't even bother about it and it would be useless. Come, follow me to the warehouse to take a look at the 3 severely injured Feis that I left behind. They are the best items in this batch of goods. After Zhou Jiesin spoke to Lin Yuan, she instructed the shop assistant who was busy in the store and led Lin Yuan to the warehouse. The shop assistant in Zhou Jiesin's shop was a chubby girl who loved to laugh. The last time Lin Yuan had visited the store, he hadn't seen him. This time he had seen him in person. The young shop assistant also looked at Lin Yuan a few times. The staff of the Fei and Spiritual Ingredient Store had naturally noticed the Class 2 Creation Master emblem hanging on Lin Yuan's chest. Due to the instinctive reverence for Creation Masters, the shop assistant didn't dare to greet Lin Yuan despite his lively personality. Lin Yuan followed Zhou Jiesin to the warehouse. Lin Yuan could feel that although Zhou Jiesin had been talking to him, there seemed to be something she wanted to ask but could not bring herself to ask. Lin Yuan did not point it out. The relationship between him and Zhou Jiesin was just a client. If Zhou Jiesin really wanted to ask him for help, he could help her with her business matters. But the premise was that Zhou Jiesin could afford it. If it was something else, Lin Yuan would still reject it. After all, he wasn't a goody two-shoes. After walking into the warehouse, Lin Yuan immediately saw a dying fei lying on the ground. It was an antelope. This is a sword horn speed antelope, a rather good silver fei. The sword horn speed antelope's sword horn is extremely long, and the sword horn speed antelope is at silver X/elite. It is just a step away from gold. Therefore, the sword horn speed antelope's flesh is an excellent choice, be it for feeding feis or for consumption. Zhou Jessen introduced the sword horn speed antelope. Zhou Jessen had spent a lot of effort on this sword horn speed antelope and had fed it plenty of bronze usnias. Otherwise, the sword horn speed antelope might have already died. Lin Yuan walked over and looked at the sword horn speed antelope. He extended his hand and placed it on the sword horn speed antelope's horn. The sword horn speed antelope struggled to lift its head and took a glance at Lin Yuan before lowering its head again. It was obvious that the sword horn speed antelope was aware of its body's condition. With the intelligence of a silver fei, it was completely aware of its fate. The sword horn speed antelope's life force was slowly slipping away, causing the sword horn speed antelope to become weaker. Lin Yuan checked on the sword horn speed antelope's condition and stood up. Lin Yuan wasn't sure of the limits of his healing ability, so he was planning to use this sword horn speed antelope to do an experiment. Looking at the pure land of bliss in the spirit lock spatial zone, if he circulated his spirit chi with all his might, he would be able to recover the sword horn speed antelope's injuries within an hour. Zhou Jessen might already know that Lin Yuan was a Class 2 creation master, but out of habit, she still gave a detailed introduction of the sword horn speed antelope's condition. This sword horn speed antelope's injuries can't be seen on the surface, but its internal injuries are extremely severe. This sword horn speed antelope suffered an intense impact, causing its internal organs to shift. In fact, 2 of its internal organs are even ruptured. Last night, I fed some bronze usnias to help the sword horn speed antelope recover some energy. But from the looks of its current condition, this sword horn speed antelope shouldn't be able to last for more than 5 hours. Lin Yuan had already checked on the sword horn speed antelope's injuries, and after hearing Zhou Jessen's explanation, he couldn't help but lament at Zhou Jessen's business philosophy. For such a severely injured fei, as long as it was still alive, it was rare for a seller to take the initiative to explain the injuries and predict the time of death. For a sword horn speed antelope that didn't have any visible injuries on its surface, other stores wouldn't clearly state that it would die within 5 hours. It might be the truth, but it would greatly reduce the fei's value. Lin Yuan admired Zhou Jessen's business philosophy and honest attitude. Big Sister Xin, what is the price of this sword horn speed antelope? A silver fei like the sword horn speed antelope wouldn't be expensive when it was in an endangered state. No matter how good the sword horn speed antelope's sword horn was, it wasn't considered a rare spiritual ingredient. The usage of this spiritual ingredient was to grind the horn, so there wasn't a requirement for the spiritual ingredient's appearance. The price of the sword horn speed antelope's sword horn was comparable to the sword horn speed antelope's over 70 kilograms of silver fei meat. The sword horn speed antelope was a very light and delicate agility type fei. It had decent damage and was extremely easy to rear. Therefore, the sword horn speed antelope was a rather popular fei. 100 radiance dollars will do. Zhou Jessen spoke very straightforwardly. Lin Yuan calculated the price. If 100 radiance dollars were to buy a dead sword horn speed antelope, it would be just right. For a sword horn speed antelope in its current state, the price should be around 150 radiance dollars. Chapter 78. When Lin Yuan recalled how Zhou Jessen looked like she had something to say along the way, he understood. After this transaction, Zhou Jessen would probably say what she wanted to say. Lin Yuan looked at Zhou Jessen and realized that she was also looking at him. Lin Yuan smiled and said, "All right." Zhou Jessen was very happy to see Lin Yuan's expression. Her goodwill was already very obvious, and anyone smart would be able to guess the meaning behind her words. Now that Lin Yuan didn't reject it, it meant that there was a way for her to say what she wanted to say. Now that Lin Yuan didn't reject it, it meant that there was a way for her to say what she wanted to say. After looking at the sword horn speed antelope, Zhou Jessen pointed at the charred tree trunk beside the sword horn speed antelope and said, "The next fei is this. The next fei is this." Lin Yuan looked over and saw that the pitch-black tree trunk was filled with scorch marks. Lin Yuan walked forward and used his hand to gently touch the scorch marks. He realized that the scorch marks would shatter and wither when he touched them. Lin Yuan's heart shuddered. This tree should have been burned by the abyss dimensional rift's devil flames. The marks on the tree trunk were very similar to the abyss flame's withering characteristics. The tree trunk was bare and had nothing. The roots at the bottom of the tree trunk were no more than half a meter long, and they were all severed. There was also a hole on the tree trunk, and it was obvious that the tree core had been dug out. However, Lin Yuan could still faintly feel the sparse vitality contained within the tree. Only high-grade wood-type spirit plants would be able to grow a tree core, and the weakest spirit plant would be at least silver. This proved that this tree that had been burned by the abyss flames was at least a silver life form. However, Lin Yuan felt that even without the tree core, it was still able to preserve a trace of vitality within the tree's body for such a long time. This proved that this spirit plant was extraordinary and was most likely a gold spirit plant. Lin Yuan used true data to check on the tree, and the data caused his body to tremble. Fey name: Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus. Fey species: Osmanthus genus / Osmanthus family. Fey grade: Gold, 4 out of 10. Fey type: Wood. Fey quality: Flawless abilities. Frowny face. Osmanthus fragrance: The Osmanthus fragrance can refresh the mind and eliminate fatigue. Falling flowers: Flowers fall all year round, and the falling flowers can quickly remove the poison in the target's body. Cleansing flower bud: Shake off a flower bud that hasn't bloomed yet. The nectar in the flower bud can heal mental injuries. Osmanthus spirit: The aura of fortune and nobility contained in the Osmanthus flowers can resist and eliminate curse damage and curse imprints. Exclusive skill: Frowny face poison repellent: Can effectively remove all kinds of poisons that are difficult to remove and dispel curse-type mental poisons. At this time, Zhou Jessen's voice sounded again. This Fey has been appraised to be a gold spirit plant. It should be an Osmanthus species. Zhou Jessen didn't know much about this spiritual plant. It was just that when he used his own connections to purchase the goods, he found out that this was a gold Osmanthus. If it wasn't a gold Fey or an Osmanthus flower, Zhou Jessen might not have left it behind. Of course, if this gold rank Osmanthus wasn't damaged like this, or even if it was damaged like this, as long as there was a tree core, Zhou Jessen wouldn't be able to afford it. Osmanthus was one of the 10 famous flowers since ancient times. After the spirit chi awakening, there weren't any weaklings among the 10 famous flowers. Furthermore, Osmanthus was an auspicious and noble flower. Therefore, the Osmanthus's price had always been at the top of the plant-type phase. Furthermore, the Osmanthus's flower itself was a high-grade spiritual ingredient and also an ingredient. This made the Osmanthus's price even more outrageous. Humans had always been concerned about auspiciousness. When auspiciousness and beauty were combined, the price would definitely be doubled. If auspiciousness and beauty had powerful effects, they would be regarded as treasures. The Osmanthus was such an existence. However, this Osmanthus that she had brought back was almost charred, and it could only be sold for the thin layer of wood that wrapped the tree core. It could be used as a gold plant spiritual ingredient. However, it was only an ordinary spiritual ingredient because the Osmanthus's effects were all on the flowers and leaves, not on the wood of the tree trunk. However, Zhou Jessen didn't know that Lin Yuan was thinking differently from her. This wasn't an ordinary Osmanthus, but a cinnabar sweet Osmanthus. Furthermore, it was a cinnabar sweet Osmanthus that perfectly matched its abilities and exclusive skill. The exclusive skill enhanced the cinnabar sweet Osmanthus's 4 abilities. Furthermore, the cinnabar sweet Osmanthus's 4 abilities could perfectly display the exclusive skill's effects. This cinnabar sweet Osmanthus was simply the nemesis of poison type and evil beings. Not only could it remove all kinds of poison, but it could also cure and remove spirit type poisons. The cinnabar sweet Osmanthus had ways to remove curse type poisons and incantation imprints that were the hardest to remove. It was truly an ultimate treasure and could be said to be the model of a pure healing type Fey. Excluding the abilities and exclusive skill, the cinnabar sweet Osmanthus was also a famous species among Osmanthus. Thousands of 4-petal Osmanthus flowers hung on the branches, and they were even more dazzling than the red clouds in the evening sky. Such an auspicious Fey was truly in a miserable state now. This cinnabar sweet Osmanthus might be useless in other people's hands and could only be used as a spiritual ingredient. However, if it was planted beside Lin Yuan's pure land of bliss in the spirit lock spatial zone, this cinnabar sweet Osmanthus would definitely have a new life in the future. It would bloom into a tree that was flourishing on the branches. Lin Yuan had to obtain the cinnabar sweet Osmanthus. He might not be able to sign a contract with the cinnabar sweet Osmanthus, but if he planted it in the spirit lock spatial zone, he would be able to use the cinnabar sweet Osmanthus flowers to remove the poison to a certain extent. The jasmine lily might be able to heal injuries, but it didn't have the effect of removing poison. Lin Yuan might not be able to use the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus ability in battle, but it could be used when nurturing and healing phase. Lin Yuan might not be able to use the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus ability in battle, but it could be used when nurturing and healing phase. If he were to miss out on this Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, he would need to spend 1,000 times the price to purchase another one. Take a gold dragon species Fey that cost 80 radiance dollars for a single drop of blood. The Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus's transaction price in the rare lifeform pavilion was even higher than the gold dragon species Fey. Big Sister XN, what is your price for this charred Fey? Lin Yuan looked at the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus. He even wanted to release spiritual power into the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus body. However, Lin Yuan endured it. It was impossible that no creation master had seen such a Fey before. For a gold Fey like the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, even a Class 4 creation master might take it to see if it was worth healing. Lin Yuan was only a Class 2 creation master, and if Zhou Jessen saw him healing the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus here, it wouldn't be a good thing for him. Chapter 79. After speaking, Zhou Jessen went to the table and rummaged through the brocade boxes. Most of the brocade boxes on the table were rare spiritual ingredients. These rare spiritual materials were Zhou Jessen's precious stock. Zhou Jessen said as she rummaged through them. While rummaging, Zhou Jessen said, "The third Fey that grew with the Osmanthus Fey is still alive, but I can't tell what it is. It is so dry and it might lose its vitality in a short while." After searching for a long time, Zhou Jessen took out a brocade box and handed it to Lin Yuan. When handing it to Lin Yuan, Zhou Jessen laughed heartily. "I will give you 300 radiance dollars for the previous Osmanthus Fey. As for the item in this brocade box, Big Sister XN will treat it as a gift." Zhou Jessen couldn't tell what the item in the brocade box was. However, it had the wave of a gold Fey during the inspection, so it should be considered a good item. However, Zhou Jessen didn't know what it was used for. When she had purchased the Osmanthus Fey, someone had given it to her, so she might as well give it to Lin Yuan as a favor. Lin Yuan's mind was on the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, so he didn't pay attention to the Fey that Zhou Jessen had given him. However, when he looked at it now, he was instantly stunned. The Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was no longer able to distract Lin Yuan. Under True Data's observation, the shriveled item in the box that looked like a layer of burnt black film was actually a treasure that could increase one's mental strength. Fey name: Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia, Fey species. Reed species /Aphoxanthaceae, Fey grade. Gold, 8 out of 10. Fey type: grass, Fey quality. Flawless. The Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia was a kind of companion Fey. It only grew on plants that were filled with auspicious and holy aura. As a companion Fey, it was extremely rare. Even in the Rare Lifeform Pavilion's annual large-scale auction, the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia would be the finale item. The Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia was born with the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, hence its name. If it was accompanied by other flowers that had rich luster, the name would also change. As a member of the Aphoxanthaceae, the Haworthia inherited the characteristics of the Aphoxanthaceae. Rather than saying that the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia was a Fey, it was better to say that it was a spiritual ingredient that could evolve and grow. The Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia did not have any skills or exclusive skills, and it was highly toxic. The Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia would only bear fruit once every few years at the platinum level. Each time, it would produce 3 to 5 crystal-like fruits. It had always been said that it was extremely difficult to heal a spirit chi professional's spiritual energy injuries. The reason why it could not be healed was that the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia could heal the injured spiritual energy to a certain extent. It was also one of the few holy items in this world that could heal mental injuries. Even if one's mental strength was not damaged, eating the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia would have a certain effect. The effect was to stimulate the brain and increase one's spiritual power. The Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia was truly a good item for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's spiritual energy had been pitifully weak ever since he had contracted Morbius. Genius and Chimey had also been contracted by Lin Yuan when Feys were not considered. After contracting Genius and Chimey, Lin Yuan had been unconscious for several days. If he could increase his spiritual energy, it would be a metamorphosis for him. Even if the increase in spiritual energy could not allow him to contract more Feys, it could still make his mind clearer. If his spiritual energy increased enough, it wasn't impossible for Lin Yuan to contract a new Fey in the future. As compared to the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia was undoubtedly more pleasant to Lin Yuan. However, if the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia wanted to grow, it had to grow on the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus. At this moment, Lin Yuan wanted to quickly purchase the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus and Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia and bring them back to cultivate for healing. Big Sister Xian, I want these 2 fays. In addition to the Sword Horn Speed Antelope, I will transfer the money together. Soon enough, Lin Yuan and Zhou Jiesin completed the transfer. Zhou Jiesin used Ostrich Logistics' Fei storage box and immediately arranged for the delivery of the 3 dying Feis in front of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was currently very grateful to Zhou Jiesin. For Zhou Jiesin to help him keep these 3 Feis, it was undoubtedly the same as giving him an opportunity. When Lin Yuan saw that Zhou Jiesin wanted to speak but had been observing his expression, he took the initiative to speak. Big Sister Xian, I am also considered an old customer. If you have anything to say, just say it. Lin Yuan might have guessed what Zhou Jiesin was going to say, but before Zhou Jiesin said it, Lin Yuan couldn't be certain. Zhou Jiesin didn't expect that Lin Yuan would actually take the initiative to mention it before she could speak. She was instantly overjoyed. If Lin Yuan didn't wish to help, he wouldn't have spoken first. Since he had spoken, there should be a way. Zhou Jiesin had been in the business world for several years, and when Lin Yuan said that they were old customers, Zhou Jiesin heard it clearly. When Lin Yuan mentioned customers, it meant that Lin Yuan was willing to help her with her business. He was also telling her that he might not be able to help with other matters. Zhou Jiesin didn't need Lin Yuan's help with anything else, and she just hoped to be able to purchase goods from Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, Big Sister Xian knows that you also have a store that sells rare Feis. I wonder if Big Sister Xian can purchase goods from your store. Lin Yuan blinked his eyes. It seemed like he had guessed correctly. As expected, it was about purchasing goods. The Feis sold in his store might be evolved from common Feis, like the Usnias that weren't even normal grade or the normal grade Spirit Siphon Goldfish. These Feis might be common in the low-grade market, but the elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish and Bronze Usnias were rarely circulated in the market. Even though Zhou Jiesin had managed the Star Web store for so many years, she had her own connections. It was possible to obtain 1 or 2 elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish and 1 or 2 pots of Bronze Usnias, but it was impossible to obtain them in bulk. On average, Lin Yuan would be able to produce 100 Spirit Siphon Goldfish every 3 days. After a period of time, another batch of 5 Fortune Ranchu appeared on the market. If Lin Yuan wanted to increase his Spirit Chi occupation's rank, he would need to evolve a large number of Bronze Usnias. Therefore, it didn't matter if he bought for Zhou Jiesin. When Zhou Jiesin saw Lin Yuan's pondering expression, she quickly replied. Lin Yuan, Big Sister Xian isn't trying to obtain goods from you cheaply. Big Sister Xian can increase the price by 3% from your store's retail price. To tell you the truth, my store is already at its limit without a 3-star creation master. Big Sister Xian wishes to purchase some rare Feis from you and see if it can become a 4-star store by the end of the year. Zhou Jiesin's words were very sincere. He told Lin Yuan about his difficulties and also showed his cooperative attitude. Lin Yuan listened to Zhou Jiesin's words and smiled. Chapter 80. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Zhou Jiesin was pleasantly surprised. Previously, Zhou Jiesin thought that it would be great if she could get 20 Spirit Siphon Goldfish and around 10 pots of Bronze Usnias. She didn't expect for Lin Yuan to give her goods that exceeded her expectations by so many times. With these resources, it would no longer be an old store that could only rely on the quality of spiritual ingredients to attract customers. With these rare items, she just had to limit the supply, and the store's reputation would quickly improve. She would also need to organize some activities to decline customers. With such a trump card, it wasn't impossible for the store to become a Class 4 store by the end of the year. Her dream of many years had never been realized. Now that Lin Yuan's words had given her the opportunity to realize it, the calm Zhou Jiesin didn't know what to do. Zhou Jiesin was extremely glad that she had made the decision earlier. If she hadn't expressed goodwill to this youth, he wouldn't have treated her like this. The items in this youth's hands would be a premium of 10% for other stores that wanted to raise their stars. Zhou Jiesin had long heard of the Feis in Lin Yuan's store. The quality was ridiculously good, and the price wasn't expensive either. Every time the goods were on the shelves, they would be sold out in less than 3 minutes. Apart from that, Lin Yuan was a Class 2 creation master. Just this point alone was enough for Zhou Jiesin to rope him in. However, Lin Yuan's straightforward method made Zhou Jiesin feel that apart from the relationship of benefits, they were more like friends. Lin Yuan, Big Sister Xian shall thank you in advance. In the future, when you purchase spiritual ingredients from Big Sister Xian's store, Big Sister Xian will sell them to you at the stock price. Or if you need any spiritual ingredients that you can't find, I can help you publish a purchase information and ask around. Zhou Jiesin had now completely opened up her connections and channels to Lin Yuan. In fact, Zhou Jiesin understood that her connections and channels might not be considered much for a Class 2 Creation Master. However, this was for most of the veteran Class 2 Creation Masters. Lin Yuan was a newbie that had just become a Class 2 Creation Master. He might have the ability, but he was still respected. However, he didn't have many connections and channels. From now on, Zhou Jiesin would be the first channel that Lin Yuan had accumulated. Big Sister X, if you want to charge to a 4-star store, I can provide you with 20 Elite 5 Fortune Ranches and 20 pots of silver usnias next month. If Zhou Jiesin could evolve into a Class 4 store with his connections, it would also be helpful to him. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't mind helping Zhou Jiesin at this crucial juncture so that she could improve further. In this way, Zhou Jiesin's connection would be of great help to him. When Zhou Jiesin heard Lin Yuan's words, she wasn't just happy. She was even more shocked. Zhou Jiesin was now certain that Lin Yuan had a veteran Class 3 Creation Master backing him. He might not just be a Class 3 Creation Master. He might even be a Class 4 Creation Master. In the Radiance Federation, if Class 5 Creation Masters didn't make a move, Class 4 Creation Masters were already at the level of heavenly protection. Class 4 Creation Masters were existences that Zhou Jiesin couldn't even look up to in the past. Now, Zhou Jiesin knew that she had underestimated how powerful Lin Yuan's background was. She had sold the 5 fortune ranches to Lin Yuan because she wanted to help the female 5 fortune ranches lay eggs and nurture the female 5 fortune ranches to elite grade in a short month. Such means weren't something an ordinary Class 3 Creation Master could achieve. Furthermore, there were 20 pots of silver usnias. The usnias were phase that couldn't even reach normal from beginner, and it was much harder to evolve to silver than other phase. Without needing the 25 fortune ranches, just the impact of these 20 pots of silver usnias was enough for her store to strive for Class 4. Right now, what Zhou Jiesin had to do was to gather the price for these 25 fortune ranches and 20 pots of silver usnias within this month. Zhou Jiesin had to use her usual money to buy plenty of goods. Now that she thought about it, taking out so much money was truly a challenge that Zhou Jiesin had to face for this month. After completing the transaction with Zhou Jiesin, Lin Yuan ordered another 25,000 caddies of inferior energy ores from Zhou Jiesin. Zhou Jiesin had sold the 25,000 caddies of inferior energy ores to Lin Yuan at the purchase price. This allowed Lin Yuan to save close to half of the money, and it was obvious how profitable spiritual ingredient transactions were. After exiting the Star Web, Ostrich Logistics Express delivery arrived in a short moment. Lin Yuan sprinkled a large amount of inferior energy ores into the spirit pool, allowing a portion of the spirit pool to decompose and leave behind a thick layer at the bottom. Immediately after, Lin Yuan placed the Sword Horn Speed Antelope, Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, and Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia phase storage boxes into the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, which was beside the Pure Land of Bliss. He then took the initiative to open the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's box. Dense spirit chi seeped into the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body through its skin and into its damaged internal organs. It helped the Sword Horn Speed Antelope recover its damaged internal organs. Lin Yuan circulated spirit chi into the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body in a soothing manner and helped it recover its injuries. The Sword Horn Speed Antelope looked at Lin Yuan with grateful eyes. It used its cheek to rub against Lin Yuan's hand and lay on the Pure Land of Bliss to rest under Lin Yuan's arrangement. The Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body was very small, and it only took up a small space on the Pure Land of Bliss. Its curled-up body quickly fell asleep, and the surrounding spirit chi slowly entered the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body. The Sword Horn Speed Antelope slowly recovered its injuries. Next, Lin Yuan was going to be busy with a huge project. After opening the 2 gold phase storage boxes, Lin Yuan spent a lot of effort to plant the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus that was almost charred at the side of the Pure Land of Bliss. At the same time, he carefully placed the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia at the creases of the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus trunk. He believed that in a short period of time, the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia would take root on the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus. Lin Yuan circulated his spirit chi with all his might and poured it into the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus. With Lin Yuan's hard work, the effects weren't obvious even on the Pure Land of Bliss in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. The Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was indeed a gold fey. With Lin Yuan's D-rank spirit chi professional spiritual power, it was still rather difficult for him to heal a gold fey. Lin Yuan felt the spirit chi content in his body. After these few days of hard work and constant evolution of phase, Lin Yuan's spirit chi content was already more than half of a D-rank spirit chi professional's energy value to that of a C-rank spirit chi professional's. Lin Yuan immediately purchased a large number of usnias. For the remaining time, Lin Yuan was planning to become a C-rank spirit chi professional first. At this moment, Lin Yuan was back to his previous state of complete focus. He was enhancing phase day and night. 3 days passed by quickly. Lin Yuan's spirit chi was one step closer to becoming a C-rank spirit chi professional. Chapter 81. Lin Yuan looked at the time. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, Lin Yuan had focused on enhancing phase, and he could clearly feel the increase in spirit chi in his body. He looked at the bronze usnias in the house. Lin Yuan stood up, stretched, and walked toward the door. He opened the door and saw Lu Jie standing there. At this moment, Lu Jie was different from before. His temperament had changed significantly. His eyes were filled with vigor and vitality. Humans had to have a goal in life. Even if they did not have a goal, they should have a direction. The new Lu Jie had both a goal and a direction. Come, enter the house. Did things go smoothly for the past 3 days? Lu Jie nodded. I have settled all the things I needed to do. I will only listen to young master's instructions from now on. Lin Yuan did not correct Lu Jie's address this time. 100 years after the spirit chi awakening, retainers were considered a new relationship between humans. Lu Jie was only following the etiquette of a retainer, so there was no need for Lin Yuan to correct him again and again. Lin Yuan led Lu Jie into the house. Chimey and Genius immediately ran to Lin Yuan's shoulder and looked at Lu Jie curiously. Red Thorn, which was eating at the side, also sensed that a stranger had entered the house. It placed the thornless vine that Red Thorn had evolved on Lin Yuan. It was like a warning. As long as Lin Yuan gave the order, Red Thorn's vines would immediately grow and cover Lu Jie. Lu Jie looked at Genius and Chimey on Lin Yuan, as well as Red Thorn behind Lin Yuan. He sighed and envied them. Genius was a kitten with 2 tails and soft fur that was no longer than the length of a small arm. Chimey was only the size of half a fist, and it was a small bird with azure blue feathers with gorgeous cloud patterns. No matter who saw these 2 little fellows, they could not be compared to housekeeping pets like the 100 Questions beast or the songstress bird that could only sing. In addition, Red Thorn's sinister appearance contained killing intent everywhere. Lu Jie knew that it was a fae with extreme lethality. Seeing Lin Yuan and the 3 fays together intimately, Lu Jie could not help but think of his source-type insect queen. He knew that Lin Yuan could heal it. However, before the insect queen could fully recover, Lu Jie could not help but feel a stabbing pain in his heart when he thought of his insect queen that had already turned into a cocoon. Lin Yuan poured a glass of water for Lu Jie and explained Lu Jie's identity to Genius, Chimey, and Red Thorn. Only then did Red Thorn settle down and continue eating to accumulate energy for its evolution. What do you plan to do in the future? If I don't have any arrangements for you. Lin Yuan placed the teacup on the table next to Lu Jie. Then he sat on the chair and drank the water in his teacup. Lin Yuan's words made Lu Jie frown at once. He pondered over Lin Yuan's question. A retainer's responsibility was to follow by the Creation Master's side. They were the Creation Master's shield and also the Creation Master's sword. Everything was done according to the Creation Master's instructions. Now that Lin Yuan had asked him about his future plans, he really did not know how to answer. Lu Jie's original plan was to listen to Lin Yuan's instructions and accept his orders. Upon seeing Lu Jie pondering, Lin Yuan continued. You must be very indignant about being removed from the Radiance 100 sequence number 39 because of your injuries these past 2 years, right? Lin Yuan's words pointed out the question that Lu Jie had been avoiding all this time. The Radiance 100 was the glory that Lu Jie had always pursued. Although Lu Jie did not regret protecting Cold Frost City, if he was given another chance, he would still do it without any regard for his own safety. However, Lu Jie was also indignant about being removed from the Radiance 100 sequence. Therefore, ever since Lu Jie knew that his insect queen could not recover, he did not even participate in the Radiance 100 sequence. Given Lu Jie's merits at that time, if he had participated, he might even have retained his Radiance 100 sequence ranking. At the very least, Lu Jie would have been able to enter the Radiance 100's glory hall with honor. However, due to his pride and not wanting to be pitted, Lu Jie had given up this opportunity. He had given up the Radiance 100 by default and had worked hard to fight for the sequence. Was he indignant? Of course not. When Lin Yuan saw Lu Jie's expression, he already knew what Lu Jie was thinking and he smiled slightly. I knew that you would be indignant. If you are indignant, why don't you go back and stand in the Radiance 100 sequence again? Lin Yuan's words were like a thunderclap that exploded on Lu Jie's head. Lu Jie had never dared to think like this. He had sworn with the willpower rune to become the retainer of the youth in front of him. From that moment on, Lu Jie's thoughts had already excluded himself and considered everything from the perspective of a retainer. Now Lin Yuan's words gave Lu Jie an indescribable feeling. First, can I still do it? Then, it was gratitude toward Lin Yuan that could not be drowned by the vast ocean. For a moment, he had tasted the coldness and warmth of the world. Lu Jie, who had known that his insect queen could not recover, gritted his teeth and endured it, but his eyes had turned red. His hot tears splashed into the glass of water and splashed. The water in the cup also had a salty taste. When Lin Yuan saw Lu Jie like this, he patted his shoulder and said, "Summon your insect queen. Summon your insect queen. Let me see how long it will take for your insect queen to recover. If it's fast, you might even be able to catch up with the Radiance 100 sequences ranking at the end of the year. I think it won't be a problem for you to fight for a spot if you go." Lu Jie did not wipe away his hot tears. Instead, he raised his head and stared deeply at Lin Yuan as though he wanted to remember something. After a long time, Lu Jie revealed a somewhat silly smile. He had shed tears before, so this smile made him look a little embarrassed. However, Lin Yuan knew that Lu Jie's smile was considered to have swept away the haze and truly obtained a new life. Lin Yuan could not help but recall Elder Ning's words. Creation Masters did not only save Fays but also humans. Lu Jie summoned his insect queen and carefully held it in his hand. Lin Yuan placed his palm on the insect queen's flesh cocoon and circulated his spiritual power to quickly channel spirit qi into the flesh cocoon. The dark purple flesh cocoon was actually beating slowly like a heart. When it was beating, it emitted a soft lavender glow. At the same time, Lin Yuan could also feel that the insect queen had absorbed all the spirit qi that he had infused. After absorbing the pure spirit qi as time went by, the insect queen grew stronger. After an hour, Lin Yuan could feel that the insect queen could already keep beating gently. It would not stop when his spirit qi was interrupted. This meant that the insect queen's active function that represented vitality had been activated. Chapter 82. Lin Yuan calculated for a moment. Although he could not accurately estimate the insect queen's recovery time, it was not a problem. However, based on his initial estimation, if he was in the Pure Land of Bliss within the Spirit Lock spatial zone, the Pure Land of Bliss wouldn't be able to withstand it. 2 months should be enough for him to make a full recovery. As the insect queen's contractor, Lu Jie could naturally sense the changes in the insect queen. It was only when the insect queen kept beating that Lu Jie's heart started to race. Lu Jie could sense that his insect queen had yet to regain its consciousness. However, he could feel that his body was gradually getting better. During this hour, Lu Jie did not even dare to move his hand that was holding the cocoon for fear of disturbing Lin Yuan. Lu Jie only asked carefully when Lin Yuan removed his hand from the cocoon. "How's my insect queen doing?" For a person who had just built up hope, he couldn't experience the blow of disappointment no matter what. Lin Yuan said straightforwardly, "Leave the insect queen with me and it will recover in 2 months. You will also be able to catch up with this year's Radiance 100 sequence ranking." Lu Jie had known that Lin Yuan could heal the insect queen. However, he did not expect Lin Yuan to be able to heal the insect queen so quickly, which made him pleasantly surprised. Lu Jie carefully handed the insect queen, which was constantly beating, to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan held it in his hand and continued to circulate the spiritual power in his body, injecting pure spirit qi into the insect queen. "Young master, please tell me what to do during this period of time." Since Lin Yuan had been helping him heal the insect queen, Lu Jie didn't want to be an idle person. He wanted to help Lin Yuan fulfill his retainer duties. Lin Yuan did have something for Lu Jie to do. "Lu Jie, how much do you know about the capital?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Lu Jie answered, "I went to university in the royal city and lived in the royal city for 7 to 8 years. I'm very familiar with the royal city and can be considered a local. However, I haven't been in the royal city for 2 years, so I don't know how the royal city has changed." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded and asked, "What do you think? What do you think if I open a shop in the royal capital after the new year?" Lin Yuan also had his own ideas. After Chu Ci finished studying at the Redbud Intermediate Spirit Qi Academy, she would also have to go to the royal capital to take the exam. The royal capital was the Radiance Federation Center, and it occupied an area that was the size of 4 Redbud cities. He might as well open a small store in the imperial capital as soon as possible and pave the way for Chu Ci. During this period before the new year, Lin Yuan had to strengthen himself and raise his spirit chi occupation to C rank. At the same time, he upgraded all his phase to silver grade and above. These weren't considered too difficult. The most difficult thing was to evolve the Jasmine Lily from bronze to legend and transform it into a fantasy breed. Lin Yuan's second willpower rune was comprehended from extreme massacres and was very suitable for Red Thorn. However, he still had a way to upgrade Red Thorn from elite to epic. However, he knew that he could not upgrade Red Thorn from bronze to legend. Because Red Thorn was unable to absorb spiritual energy, it could only accumulate energy from its flesh. He was not a true creation master after all. He could only use his unique means to evolve phase, increase their quality and heal their roots. Since Lin Yuan could heal the insect queen, Lu Jie could not help but marvel at Lin Yuan's means and potential as a creation master. Now that Lin Yuan intended to develop in the royal capital, Lu Jie raised both hands in approval. The royal capital was a place where only those with true ability could stand firm and gain a foothold. The resources and opportunities were far beyond Redbud cities. Given Lin Yuan's talent and ability, it would be a waste if he did not develop in the royal capital. Young master, I feel that if you want to develop, it's best to go to the royal capital. Only after reaching the royal capital will you realize that the prosperity you see is far inferior to the royal capital. Lin Yuan fell into deep thought. Given Lu Jie's experience, it would naturally not be wrong. Since he had already made up his mind, he might as well go ahead with it. This small store would forever be the warmest home for him and Chu Xi. It was also the place where he started in this world. Lin Yuan was a person who dared to act on his ideas. He simply used his star web card to transfer 500 radiance dollars to Lu Jie's account. Lin Yuan's current earning speed was far from what it used to be. Therefore, Lin Yuan would not be as cautious when it came to spending money. Go to the royal capital and help me find out about the situation. Then help me choose a suitable location to set up a store. If there is a good store for sale, contact me directly. The price of a store in the royal capital would definitely be far from what Redbud City could compare with. If he wanted to buy a good store in the royal capital, the price would definitely not be cheap. Lin Yuan had the confidence to say this because of the 1005 fortune ranches that were about to hatch. Another reason was that Ling Xiao had given him the plot of land in Redbud City after he became a Class 2 creation master. Rather than saying that the plot of land was a store, it would be better to say that it was a manor that was over 1,800 square meters. After Lin Yuan had picked the plot of land, the deed had already been handed over to him through Penguin Logistics 2 days ago. Lin Yuan could freely use this piece of land. If there was a suitable store in the royal capital, Lin Yuan could just sell off the manor in Redbud City. This way he would be able to pay the initial payment for the store in the royal capital. In addition, given his earning speed after a period of time, especially after he became a C-rank spirit chi professional, his earnings would increase exponentially. With these trump cards, Lin Yuan spoke with extra confidence. Young master, do you have any requirements for the store? It would be best if it has a larger area. I don't have any other requirements. Lin Yuan believed that with his ability and his ability to mass-produce rare phase, it would not affect his development. Even if the store was slightly remote in the royal capital, it would not affect his development. Lu Jie was originally prepared to carefully remember Lin Yuan's requirements. After all, this was the first mission that Lin Yuan had given him, so Lu Jie was exceptionally serious. However, Lu Jie did not expect Lin Yuan to only have this one request. After giving the instructions, Lu Jie headed straight for the royal capital. Lin Yuan placed the insect queen's flesh cocoon on the pure land of bliss. Then he added plenty of inferior energy ores into the spirit pool. The consumption of inferior energy ores had been very fast in the past few days, so Lin Yuan had purchased a large batch of them. He had stored them in the spirit lock spatial zone in preparation for the spirit pool's usual supply. However, when he was purchasing the inferior energy ores this time, Lin Yuan already had the intention to buy low-grade energy ores. The quality-price ratio of inferior energy ores might be high for the spirit pool, but Lin Yuan needed time to add the energy ores. Now Lin Yuan was not as embarrassed as before. Times had changed, and low-grade energy ores were indeed more suitable for Lin Yuan than inferior energy ores. Lin Yuan enhanced phase for 7 days, day and night, and felt that he was just a step away from becoming a C-rank spirit chi professional. He was planning to go on the star web and order another batch of goods. Lin Yuan realized that he had received a message from Redbud City Lordess Ling Xiao. Chapter 83. As the city lord of Redbud City, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that Ling Xiao had a myriad of affairs to attend to every day. All the big and small matters in Redbud City required Ling Xiao's decision. Even when Redbud City had given him the reward, Ling Xiao hadn't personally appeared. Instead, it had been one of Ling Xiao's subordinates. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this was already a great honor. And now, the city lord of Redbud City, Ling Xiao, had personally come looking for him. Ling Xiao, Lin Yuan, I am Redbud City City Lord Ling Xiao. 2 days later, someone will go to the Xia region to pick you up. At that time, someone will contact you directly. You might have to travel far, so make preparations in advance. When Lin Yuan received Ling Xiao's message, he rubbed his temples. This news came so suddenly that Lin Yuan did not know what it was. Ling Xiao's message didn't mention it either. Rather than saying that Ling Xiao had sent a question, it was more like a notification. Lin Yuan thought about the benefits that Elder Ning had mentioned before. So far, he had only obtained the Redbud City store and land. However, the benefits that Elder Ning mentioned were definitely not referring to the shop's land. In other words, this trip was very likely to be the benefit that even Elder Ning himself was envious of. If it was a long journey, he actually did not need to prepare much. If there was a need to prepare, it would be to stock up more energy ores in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone to prepare for the usual supply. Therefore, he bought another 5,000 caddies of low-grade energy ores and 5,000 caddies of mid-grade energy ores from Big Sister Xan. The concentration of spiritual energy contained in low-grade energy ores was 5 times that of low-grade energy ores. The concentration of spirit energy contained in mid-grade energy ores was 5 times that of low-grade energy ores. Compared to low-grade energy ores, the price of low-grade energy ores was much higher. However, these basic materials were not considered a burden to him. When the 5,000 caddies of low-grade energy ores and mid-grade energy ores were transported into the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. At that moment, Lin Yuan noticed that the Sword Horn Speed Antelope was already standing upright on the Pure Land of Bliss. Lin Yuan went over to take a look and realized that the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's injuries had completely recovered in the Pure Land of Bliss. When the Sword Horn Speed Antelope saw Lin Yuan, it immediately ran over and stopped in front of him. She stuck out her tongue and licked Lin Yuan's finger intimately. It was thanking Lin Yuan for saving it from a seriously injured state. Lin Yuan took some bronze usnea vines and fed them to the Sword Horn Speed Antelope. After its body recovered, the Sword Horn Speed Antelope quickly ate the leaves on the bronze usnea's vine. It had a rare appetite. Lin Yuan looked at the Sword Horn Speed Antelope, which was already a Silver X/Elite Fae before it was injured. He was only 1 step away from the gold rank. Lin Yuan also sensed that the Spirit Chi concentration in his D-rank Spirit Chi professional's body had reached the maximum value. The misty spiritual energy in his body seemed as if it could turn into liquid spiritual energy at any time. When he had just become a D-rank Spirit Chi professional, there was only a trace of mist-like Spirit Chi in his body. But now, the spiritual energy in his body had completely transformed into mist. These mists collided with each other, but every time they were about to condense into a liquid state, they would disperse. Lin Yuan knew that he needed an opportunity. If he continued to evolve his bronze rank usneas like before, it would be like dripping water piercing through a stone. Right now, if he could directly evolve this silver rank Sword Horn Speed Antelope to gold ranked, then it would be equivalent to a torrent. He could directly break through the barrier. Lin Yuan placed his hand on the satiated Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body and circulated the spiritual power in his body. He would use the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone Spirit Chi that was a few times denser than the outside world to enhance the Sword Horn Speed Antelope. Lin Yuan wasn't sure how long it would take for a Silver Fae to evolve to gold grade. But in order not to delay the appointment with Ling Xiao 2 days later, Lin Yuan still set an alarm clock. After an unknown period of time, Lin Yuan's converted Spirit Chi had been cleansed by hundreds and thousands of times. With perseverance, he finally broke through the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's layer of obstruction. Just as it broke through the layer of obstruction, the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body glowed with a resplendent golden luster. At this moment, the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's life essence was undergoing a metamorphosis. It had crossed from Silver X to gold grade. The Sword Horn Speed Antelope's first transformation was the twin horns on its head. Previously, the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's sword horns were perfectly straight like a sharp sword. But now, not only did the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's right horn not continue to grow, but it was constantly shrinking. It was transforming towards the curved small horn. In just a short moment, the Sword Horn Speed Antelope's body had shrunk to 1/3 of its original size. The coffee-colored wool on its body was also constantly turning lighter and finally turning into a khaki-colored milky white. The Sword Horn Speed Antelope was already nimble, but after evolving to gold grade, its spirituality mutation was even more thorough. Now, it had actually turned into a cute little creature. However, after shrinking, the sword horn speed antelope's legs were even more slender and filled with strength. Its body had a streamlined burst of power and became even more nimble. The sword horn speed antelope's attack method wasn't just its basic ability, which was to use the sword horn to ram the opponent. It could also use the sword horn to slice the air and form a chi blade to attack the opponent from a distance. With the sword horn speed antelope's nimble movements, it was definitely a long-range assassin. Lin Yuan used true data to check on the gold-grade sword horn speed antelope. The cute little creature in front of him noticed that the name of the gold-grade Fei had already changed. It was no longer called the sword horn speed antelope. Fei name: Wind speed rapid antelope, Fei species, Artiodactyl genus / antelope subfamily, Fei grade, gold, 1 out of 10, Fei type, wind, Fei quality, elite abilities frowny face horn strike, use the horns on the head to collide with the opponent. Horn blade, the sharp horn slashes the air and forms a wind blade to attack the target from a distance and cut. Wind protection, the power of wind floats on the surface of the body and forms a layer of wind shield. Sword strike storm, summon a storm that covers a wide area. The storm is mixed with sword chi that can slice steel plates, and it will carry out a carpet attack. Exclusive skill frowny face swift wind. While controlling the wind, it can increase the flow of the wind and increase the speed of wind-type abilities. The wind speed rapid antelope was considered a rather unorthodox evolution path for the sword horn speed antelope. It had abandoned its close combat ability and turned into a violent spellcaster. It was obvious just by looking at the gold-grade ability Sword Strike Storm. When the wind speed rapid antelope circulated its spiritual power, it would be able to summon a storm that covered a wide area. The storm was mixed with sword chi that could slice steel plates, and it would carry out a carpet attack. It was considered a very violent group ability. Chapter 84. With the addition of the wind speed rapid antelope's adorable appearance, the price could increase by several folds. Lin Yuan patted the sword horn speed antelope's head with satisfaction and thought, this little fellow is really hard-working. This little guy is really hard-working. He can be sold for a good price. The wind speed rapid antelope looked at Lin Yuan with sparkling eyes while its soft wool and cute horns rubbed against Lin Yuan's hand. It was thanking Lin Yuan for allowing its life to transform. Perhaps Lin Yuan would sell this wind speed rapid antelope in the near future and allow it to have its own spirit chi professional partner. It would help the wind speed rapid antelope and the spirit chi professional. This was the best ending for the wind speed rapid antelope. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt the feedback of spirit chi from the sword horn speed antelope's body, which broke through the barrier between his D-rank and C-rank spirit chi professional. With the intervention of this spirit chi, the spirit chi mist within his body started to constantly condense. Finally, the spirit chi mist condensed into a drop of sparkling water droplet. Traces of spirit chi constantly gathered towards the water droplet and fused into it, increasing the water droplet's volume. At this moment, Lin Yuan knew that he had officially become a C-rank spirit chi professional. Lin Yuan's alarm didn't go off, but his phone rang. Lin Yuan took the phone and saw that it was an unknown number. Lin Yuan didn't have many numbers saved in his phone, except for Chu Ci and a few numbers that he had used to purchase goods. This included Yang Mingkai, Lu Jie and Aneng. Even Zhou Jiesen could only contact him on the star web. Now that his phone was ringing, it was most likely someone sent by Ling Xiao. After picking up the phone, before Lin Yuan could say anything, a rather respectful voice came from the other end. Lord Lin Yuan, I am one of Lord Ling Zhao's subordinates. My name is Ling Wu. I am already at the Xia Region's county governor residence and am waiting for you. Lin Yuan didn't expect someone to address him as Lord. Logically speaking, with Lin Yuan's status as a Class 2 creation master, he was already worthy of being addressed as Lord. However, it depended on who was being addressed as Lord. It was very normal for spirit chi professionals to address Lin Yuan as Lord Ling Xiao for help. However, Ling Wu was one of Lord Ling Zhao's subordinates. Lin Yuan was truly surprised that Ling Wu would address him as Lord. Lin Yuan did not have much to pack. The Spirit Lock spatial zone had already prepared sufficient energy ores, and the blue flash butterfly's cocoon was placed on the table, waiting to hatch. Lin Yuan estimated that it should be within these 2 days. In fact, there was a reason why Lin Yuan didn't channel spirit chi into the blue flash butterfly's cocoon to help it hatch. The blue flash butterfly broke out of its cocoon after undergoing development. This was the work of nature. If he accelerated this process, it would be equivalent to him changing nature's uncanny workmanship to a certain extent. Although the blue flash butterfly could also be hatched, its life potential and evolution potential would be greatly reduced compared to a naturally hatched blue flash butterfly. Therefore, even if he was very anxious to turn the blue flash butterfly into Morbius bronze spirit-locked Fae, he was still waiting. Creation Masters might be able to evolve Faes and improve their quality. To a certain extent, Creation Masters were like omnipotent gods. However, during the phase formation stage, the Creation Master's interference would destroy the Fae's evolution potential. Since Lin Yuan didn't have anything to pack, he replied, "I have already packed up. After receiving Lord Ling Zhao's message, I've already packed up. I'll head to the Prefectural Governor Manor immediately." After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan exited the Spirit Lock spatial zone and circulated his spiritual energy to recall Genius, Chimey, and Red Thorn into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Usually Lin Yuan wouldn't recall Genius, Chimey, and Red Thorn into the spiritual spatial zone. Instead, he preferred to let them experience life in the outside world with him. For this trip, Lin Yuan might have a way to bring Genius and Chimey along. However, Lin Yuan was truly helpless against the massive Red Thorn. As such, Lin Yuan simply recalled them into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Originally, Lin Yuan was planning to take a look at the changes in his abilities after becoming a C-rank Spirit Chi professional. He wanted to see how much time he would need to evolve the Usnias. He also wanted to see if it would be useful for the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus recovery. However, it was obvious that he didn't have the time now. After dressing up, Lin Yuan looked into the mirror and saw the bright and handsome youth. Lin Yuan revealed his white teeth and headed straight for the county governor's residence. Even though Lin Yuan had lived in the Xia region for so many years, he was still very unfamiliar with the county governor's residence. Previously, Lin Yuan had been living his own life in a well-behaved manner. He had never stepped foot into the Xia region's county governor's residence. This trip to the county governor's residence gave Lin Yuan a feeling as though it was a lifetime ago. After alighting from the thick-hoofed donkey cart near the county governor's residence, Lin Yuan walked for less than 3 minutes. He saw plenty of people standing at the entrance of the county governor's residence. Among them, there was a rather tanned man who was being held in the center by the crowd. Among these people, Lin Yuan recognized a few of them. As a resident of the Xia region, Lin Yuan naturally knew what the county governor looked like. Wasn't the county governor standing beside the tan man who was being held in the center by the crowd? Lin Yuan had also seen the few people standing beside the county governor. Previously, when he had opened the Fei store, it was inevitable for him to interact with them. However, this interaction was one-sided. Lin Yuan recognized them, but they wouldn't remember Lin Yuan, who was just a nobody. At that moment, the tan man also saw Lin Yuan. He took a few steps forward and waved his hand. "Lord Lin Yuan is really fast. I just arrived at the bottom and Lord Lin Yuan is already here." The people from the county governor's residence only knew that Ling Wu was Lord Ling Zhao's subordinate. When he arrived, Ling Wu didn't mention anything and simply said that he was waiting for someone. Therefore, they automatically waited beside Ling Wu. However, they didn't expect that the person Ling Wu was waiting for was a youth. Furthermore, it was unbelievable that Ling Wu addressed this youth as Lord. However, when everyone saw the Class 2 Creation Master crest on Lin Yuan's chest, they understood. For such a young Class 2 Creation Master to have such a powerful background, it was self-evident. After exchanging pleasantries, Ling Wu summoned his Platinum Fae, the Scarlet Feather Fire Eagle. He then invited Lin Yuan to sit on the Fae. Previously, Lin Yuan had already sat on a Platinum Fae. Now that he was riding on the back of a Platinum Fae, he wasn't as excited and nervous as before. This Scarlet Feather Fire Eagle might be a fearsome power offense type Fae and a ferocious bird that would produce flames with every flap of its wings. The Platinum Fae quickly brought Lin Yuan to Redbud City. On the Scarlet Feather Fire Eagle's back, Ling Wu constantly conversed with Lin Yuan and seemed rather intimate. Lin Yuan understood that City Lordess Ling Xiao had asked Ling Wu to fetch him, which was actually a kind of attitude. Otherwise, she would have just announced that Lin Yuan was going to Redbud City and wouldn't have asked her subordinate to fetch him. Looking at Ling Wu's reaction, he was actually rather respectful toward Lin Yuan. This showed how much Ling Xiao valued Lin Yuan. Chapter 85. Radiance Federation Royal Capital. This was the most prosperous place in the entire Radiance Federation. As far as the eye could see, Linlin was always so harmonious. The noon sky was originally fine, but the sky had inadvertently turned gloomy. The burning ink-colored thick clouds extended their sharp claws at the clear sky. They were like evil devils that were greedy and cruel as they occupied the blue sky. The sky was pressed down by the ink-colored clouds, and it seemed to be a little lower out of nowhere. The sky above the royal capital had an oppressive feeling as though black clouds were pressing down on the city. There seemed to be a beautiful arc between darkness and light that was evenly divided into two halves. Everything happened in a flash, and the ink-colored clouds in the darkness exploded with a bright electric spark that was like a slithering silver snake. It was overturning the seas and rivers in the dark quagmire. The wind blew and ruffled the lake water outside the royal capital. It also blew off a few spots of messy red on the branches, turning them into scattered splendor. At that moment, in the royal capital's leaning moon mountain, in the radiant moon palace's garden, a woman in a moon-colored robe raised her head and looked at the sky. It was dark and gloomy, light and darkness, oppressive and relaxed, dignified and elegant, and it complemented each other in the sky. She looked at this perfectly fused scene and sighed softly. The morning sun clears up in seclusion, and the evening rain overshadows high in the sky. The breeze brushed past the loose hair on the woman's forehead, adding a touch of gentleness. The clash between extremes would always be the embodiment of nature's charm, and this charm could cleanse one's state of mind during a shock. The woman lowered her head and fiddled with the lotus flower in the water jar. The lotus flower seemed to have spirituality, and the crimson lotus flower emitted a fragrance between the woman's fingers. At that moment, an ice-cold female voice echoed beside the woman. "Moon Empress, this sunset jade leaf lotus has been nurtured by you in the garden for just over 2 years, and it has already evolved to diamond." The Moon Empress lowered her head, picked up an amber bottle, and sprayed the sunset jade leaf lotus with the liquid inside. The sunset jade leaf lotus leaves glowed with multicolored light as though it was a precious treasure. The mist that the woman sprayed out from the amber bottle had turned into a fragrance. This sunset jade leaf lotus might have evolved to diamond, but its diamond ability isn't a support type ability but an attack type ability. The Moon Empress voice was a little regretful as she spoke to the woman with the ice-cold voice. "Sangyue, go and plant the sunset jade leaf lotus in the lotus pond at the back of the hall. It would be a waste to leave the lotus fragrance in the garden." Sangyu nodded. Suddenly, footsteps could be heard. As the footsteps got closer, a gentle male voice could be heard. "Moon Empress, the young prodigy that I gave you previously is the one who passed the Class 2 Creation Master exam in Redbud City during Ling Zhao's tenure. I have already confirmed that all 3 of the Lifestyle Class Spirit Chi professional exams have full marks. These questions were specially set by Elder Ning, and it is said that they are much trickier than the Lifestyle Class Union's exams." The man's voice made the Moon Empress raise her head, and her eyes lit up. He completed the Class 2 Creation Master exam at the age of 18 and actually scored full marks for the 3 Lifestyle Class Spirit Chi occupation exams. He is truly worthy of the title Young Prodigy. The man's gentle voice continued. "Moon Empress, I have already informed Ling Xiao to bring the little genius over. You did a good job, Xianyu." Following the Moon Empress statement, the noisy wind that was blowing in the garden suddenly stopped, and there were no more disturbances. It was unknown if the wind had coincidentally stopped, or if the woman's words had stopped the disturbance. Xianyu quickly bowed. "These are all things that I should do. But Moon Empress, the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association has heard that you have the intention to accept a disciple and has chosen Creation Master Feng Yang, who is known as the #1 prodigy among the Creation Masters." Before the Moon Empress could speak, Sangyue's ice-cold voice echoed first. "Creation Master Feng Yang? A young Creation Master actually has a title? Could he already be a Class 4 Creation Master at such a young age?" Xianyu looked at Sangyue and smiled before replying in a gentle voice. "No matter how much of a prodigy a Class 4 Creation Master is, it is not a position that can be reached by the younger generation. This Creation Master Feng Yang is only a Class 2 Creation Master, but it is said that he is already qualified to be promoted to a Class 3 Creation Master. The title Feng Yang is given by the Creation Master Association's 3 vice presidents to encourage him. He is now 24 years old." Sangyue's expression didn't change and her voice was still cold. "Feng Yang? By the heavens' order to bestow the light of the sun. Such a title is truly impressive. Could it be that this Creation Master Feng Yang can lead the Radiance?" The Moon Empress laughed in response. "Sangyue, only you can say such words. However, with this encouragement, I believe that this Creation Master Feng Yang must have been carefully nurtured by the Creation Master Association." After hearing the Moon Empress words, Sangyue twitched her mouth and said, Only you can say such words. Once I heard that my lord has the intention to accept disciples. The Creation Master Association had the intention to send over 7 or 8 individuals. If Feng Yang is truly outstanding, why didn't he send him over earlier? Now that he is sent over with a title, who knows if it is a new title? Songyue nodded. You are right, Songyue. This Creation Master Feng Yang is called Cheng Rue, and he was the first to be sent over by the Creation Master Association. Back then, the Moon Empress rejected him because she was too busy. Now that he has a title, he is sent over again. I wonder what the Moon Empress thinks of him? The Moon Empress waved her hand. Forget it. Since the Creation Master Association has been so generous twice, this Empress won't reject it. When the young prodigy comes over, ask the Creation Master Association to bring this self-titled Creation Master Feng Yang over as well. Songyue responded in response. Yes, Moon Empress. At the same time, Dean Wang of the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy has also recommended someone to you. He isn't just a Creation Master, but he is also the Radiance 100 Sequences number 3 seat. His nickname is Overflowing Sea. The Moon Empress replied, then bring him over as well. Then bring him along. Let the little prodigy witness the strength of those who stand at the peak of the younger generation. When Songyue heard the Moon Empress' words, her cold voice suddenly had a hint of surprise. Moon Empress is so considerate for the young prodigy. Could it be that you are planning to accept the young prodigy as a disciple? Wouldn't Songyue and I have an additional young master? The Moon Empress smiled. I will only know if he succeeds after I personally test him. The Moon Empress might be saying this, but she recalled the information that Songyue had sent over. That stack of words recorded the scenes of a youth trying to survive with his younger sister. After the Spirit Guard's loyalty, he sent his younger sister to school, and he did his best to prepare Phase for his younger sister. When doing business, he adhered to principles and wasn't arrogant or rash. These qualities were what the Moon Empress admired. Character was precious, and at certain times, it was even more important than talent. However, she would only know after she truly saw him. As one of the Moon Empress' 2 Moon envoys, Songyue was currently going to the Creation Master Association and the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Chi University to pass on the Moon Empress information. However, when she left, Songyue already knew that she was going to have an additional young master. Otherwise, with the Moon Empress' temper, she wouldn't reveal the slightest bit of favoritism. Songyue, follow me to the breeding room. You are going to be teacher's person and you must prepare the necessary greeting gifts. The Moon Empress was thinking about how much the Chef Supreme and Bamboo Monarch treasured their disciples. The Moon Empress expressed that it was just child's play. Chapter 86. The Scarlet Feather Fire Eagle's flying speed was extremely fast and soon arrived at Redbud City. Lin Yuan stood on the Scarlet Feather Fire Eagle's back and looked over, but he couldn't see the entire city. It was obvious how vast Redbud City was. The Scarlet Feather Fire Eagle didn't stop, but it wasn't like how Lin Yuan's previous flying phase stopped at the designated landing spot in Redbud City. Instead, it flew straight into the Redbud City City Lordess residence and stopped on the limestone steps outside the City Lordess residence. Lord Lin Yuan, follow me in. I reckon that Lord Ling Xiao has been waiting for a long time. This statement made Lin Yuan's brows raise. When he received Ling Wu's notification, he immediately went to the Xia region's county governor's residence without any delay. Therefore, it wasn't because he was slow, but because in Ling Wu's heart, Ling Xiao was in a hurry to see him. Since Lin Yuan couldn't think of a reason, Lin Yuan didn't want to think about it anymore. In any case, when he saw Ling Xiao, he believed that Ling Xiao would give him an answer. Lin Yuan followed Ling Wu into the City Lordess Residence's Grand Hall, and Ling Xiao was the only one there. After Ling Wu brought Lin Yuan over, he reported to Ling Xiao and went to busy himself with his own matters. Ling Xiao looked at Lin Yuan, and his expressionless face didn't show any joy. However, Lin Yuan could feel the joy in Ling Xiao's actions. It must have been a tiring journey. Have a meal with me at noon, and I will bring you to the royal capital in the afternoon. After hearing the words royal capital, Lin Yuan's previous doubts seemed to be answered. It seemed like the benefits that even Elder Ning was envious of were in the royal capital. The benefits of the royal capital and creation masters could even make a class 4 creation master like Elder Ning envious. Could it be related to the 3 majesties above the clouds? City Lordess, this kid isn't tired. May I know why we are going to the royal capital? Ling Xiao hesitated for a moment and asked. The Moon Empress wishes to meet you. He didn't say anything else. Originally, if Lin Yuan didn't ask, Ling Xiao didn't intend to say anything and would just bring Lin Yuan to the Moon Empress. As for the Moon Empress' intention to accept a disciple, Ling Xiao might know about it, but he wouldn't reveal it to Lin Yuan. Ling Xiao really hoped that the Moon Empress disciple would be in Redbud City. Mentioning the leak might give him a better idea and prepare to perform well in advance. However, Ling Xiao also understood what could be said and what could not be said. As it was related to the Moon Empress' thoughts, Ling Xiao didn't dare to say much. Keeping his mouth shut was the best choice. Lin Yuan didn't expect that he had guessed correctly. It seemed like the great benefit that Elder Ning mentioned was related to the Moon Empress. Ling Xiao sized up Lin Yuan and said, "Before eating, go take a bath and change your clothes. I will get someone to prepare your clothes. You must not be rude when meeting the Moon Empress." Lin Yuan suddenly felt as though he was being despised. She looked at the pair of jeans she was wearing and the white half-sleeve shirt she was wearing. She then looked at Ling Xiao's eyes. Lin Yuan was sure that he was really being despised. Ling Xiao called two people over, and they were the city lord residence's staff members. Ling Xiao asked them to bring Lin Yuan to take a bath and change his clothes. After cleaning up, Ling Xiao's eyes lit up when she saw Lin Yuan again. What he had chosen for Lin Yuan was nothing more than a set of standard spirit chi clothing. The black spirit chi clothing had some dark patterns, a fitting cut, and a matte texture with some simple metal decorations. When Lin Yuan was wearing such a simple spirit chi clothing, even Ling Xiao couldn't help but say that the person on top of the world was like jade, and the young master was unparalleled. Apart from his handsomeness, there was also a kind of calmness. This was a kind of aura that was previously concealed by Lin Yuan's clothing. Now that this aura was being emitted, it really added a little manly aura to Lin Yuan. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the lunch wasn't simple. There were 8 dishes on the table and only he and Ling Xiao were eating. Most of the ingredients for the dishes were from gold phase. This meal made Lin Yuan understand what it meant to be rich and imposing. This meal was equivalent to eating half a gold fei. It would at least cost close to 10,000 radiance dollars. However, when the dishes entered his stomach, Lin Yuan could vaguely feel that the spirit chi in his body was constantly increasing. The food made from gold spiritual ingredients actually had the effect of slowly increasing one's cultivation. When Ling Xiao saw that Lin Yuan was almost done eating, she said to the butler, "Prepare another portion of Spirit Swamp Rhino's milk." Spirit Swamp Rhino was a platinum fei, and it was said that its milk had an extremely strong bone-strengthening effect. The Spirit Swamp Rhino was a platinum fei, and it was said that the Spirit Swamp Rhino's milk had an extremely strong bone-strengthening effect. It was actually made into a double-skin milk dessert. After eating this meal, Lin Yuan somewhat understood that cultivation was really like rolling a snowball. When it was a small snowball, it was very hard to roll it into a big snowball. If one used too much force in the middle, the snowball would scatter. But when the small snowball became a big snowball, no matter how much it rolled on the ground, it might not scatter, but it would be hard to feel the snowball's volume increase. Therefore, if the snowball's volume wanted to increase, one had to do their best to not let go of any of the snow and fuse all of it into the body. This was also why high-tier spirit chi professionals would use large amounts of food to supplement their cultivation while cultivating. Lin Yuan could feel the changes in his body's spirit chi and bones. Lin Yuan could not help but think that he could still afford the food made from bronze spiritual ingredients. In fact, he could even occasionally eat a few meals made from silver spiritual ingredients. Should he prepare meals made of these spiritual ingredients for himself and Chu Si as well? After the meal, Ling Xiao summoned her aerial spirit beast. Lin Yuan looked over and saw that this spirit beast horse was snow white with a blue jade horn on its head. It also had a pair of giant white wings with specks of sapphire blue. It looked very handsome and elegant. Using true data, Lin Yuan found out that this elegant-looking horse was actually a fantasy breed. It was even a diamond fantasy breed, Blue Jade Pegasus. When Lin Yuan rode on the Blue Jade Pegasus with Ling Xiao, he really did not expect that he would actually be riding on the back of a fantasy breed fei. The Blue Jade Pegasus flapped its wings and soared into the sky. The sharp horn on its head drew across the sky with a dreamy blue color and a jade-like luster. It had a little of the feeling of Lantian's warm jade smoke. The Blue Jade Pegasus flew at an extremely fast speed, and when Lin Yuan looked at the ground, he felt that the mountains and rivers on the ground were like illusions. Even with the Blue Jade Pegasus speed, it will take over a day to travel from Redbud City to the royal capital. During this period of time, you can recuperate on the back of the Pegasus. Lin Yuan nodded in agreement. City Lord, even with the Blue Jade Pegasus speed, it actually takes over a day to reach the royal capital. The royal capital is really far from Redbud City. Lin Yuan looked at the illusory mountains and rivers under his feet and could not help but click his tongue again. Chapter 87. Ling Xiao looked at the illusory mountains and rivers beneath his feet, which were constantly changing as the blue jade Pegasus flapped its wings. Redbud City isn't considered far from the royal capital. Among the 32 cities, Redbud City is located in the south-central region and is considered the 14th closest city to the royal capital. The extreme north's Cold Frost City, the extreme south's Blazing Flame City, and the west's Marsh Roost City are considered the further cities. Even with the blue jade Pegasus's speed, it will take at least half a month to reach. Ling Xiao didn't usually speak much, but he was willing to explain to Lin Yuan. As Lin Yuan listened to Ling Xiao's description, he felt that the knowledge he learned from books was ultimately just a number. No matter how shocking the number was, it couldn't compare to sitting on a fantasy breed Fey and feeling its speed, using time to measure the Radiance Federation's vastness. If we travel by water, will the time be shorter? Lin Yuan realized that Ling Xiao had been guiding the blue jade Pegasus to travel on land. Even if they passed through water, it would be inland rivers and lakes and never the sea. Ling Xiao used his hand to caress the blue jade Pegasus's neck and combed its fur, but his expression turned grave. When you possess a Fey that can fly in the sky, the first lesson you have to learn is not to fly above the sea. After the Spirit Chi awakening, the sea, which humans could freely fish before the Spirit Chi awakening, had become the most dangerous region after the Spirit Chi awakening. No matter how vast the land was, it would only occupy less than 40% of the planet, and the remaining 60% was the sea. The sea was deep and undetectable. Even in the coastal waters, one might encounter a wild gold Fey. A goldfish-type Fey could easily overturn a fishing boat in the sea. Occasionally, platinum Feys would come to the coastal waters, which made the coastal waters exceptionally dangerous. If one were to fly above the sea and encounter a giant whale Fey, the giant whale Fey might accidentally spit out a water pillar and shoot it down, resulting in death or injury. Lin Yuan could hear the seriousness in Ling Xiao's words, and he immediately remembered them. He engraved these words firmly in his heart, but he still asked, "Even a diamond/fantasy breed Fey can't do it?" Ling Xiao turned around and looked at Lin Yuan with a look of admiration. He did not expect Lin Yuan to be able to tell that this blue jade Pegasus was a diamond/fantasy breed Fey. It wasn't hard to see that the blue jade Pegasus was a fantasy breed, but in order for Lin Yuan to ride it comfortably, Ling Xiao had already restrained the blue jade Pegasus' prowess. Lin Yuan could still tell that the blue jade Pegasus was a fantasy breed. Such insight wasn't something that a person who had just become a Class 2 creation master would have. However, while Ling Xiao was full of praise, the words that came out of his mouth were especially serious. These serious words made Lin Yuan's hair stand on end. Because there might be myth breed Feys in the deep sea. Myth breed? Lin Yuan asked. Lin Yuan had never heard of myth breed before. In fact, there was no mention of it in the star web. But for some reason, these three words seemed to have a magic power that shook people's hearts. Yes, a myth breed. It was an existence that was superior to the fantasy breed. When a Fey reached the legend grade and fused with the world willpower to form a willpower rune, it could be called a fantasy breed. Fantasy breed Feys had already surpassed the scope of science and were Feys that only existed in fantasy. As for myth breed, it transforms shallow fantasies into real myths. Every myth breed Fey that appears is equivalent to a myth, and each Fey's power is enough to create a myth. When talking about the myth breed, Ling Xiao's eyes were filled with deep yearning and respect. Ling Xiao's words had opened the door to a new world for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan had always thought that fantasy breeds were the pinnacle. As a creation master, Lin Yuan knew that Feys had limitless possibilities to evolve, but he didn't expect it to be a myth above fantasy. When Ling Xiao saw Lin Yuan's shocked expression, he thought to himself, if Lin Yuan could become the Moon Empress disciple, it wouldn't be too early to say this. Then Lin Yuan would be able to touch the myth realm. After all, the Moon Empress was a living legend. Lin Yuan, the myth breed is a secret that the Radiance Federation hasn't publicized on Star Web, so don't spread it. Also, do you know how the grades of fantasy breed Feys are divided? Lin Yuan still couldn't understand Ling Xiao's question. However, the answers to these questions aroused his desire for the unknown. Junior doesn't know, please tell me, City Lord. Ling Xiao pointed at the blue jade Pegasus and said, "This blue jade Pegasus is a Class 1 fantasy breed Fey. Fantasy breed Feys are classified as Fantasy V, and every transformation is equivalent to one sublimation." Lin Yuan firmly engraved the words Fantasy V transformation in his heart. Ling Xiao looked at Lin Yuan and suddenly said, "That's right. If you have the ability when you become a creation master, don't let your combat strength fall behind." Lin Yuan was deeply moved by Ling Xiao's words. Creation masters were just powerful means to evolve phase. Although it was also considered a kind of strength at certain times, a combat class spirit chi professional's ability was the foundation of one's survival. At this point, neither Ling Xiao nor Lin Yuan spoke again. The sun set in the west and night fell. The thin air in the sky was chilly. After October it was already autumn. The bright moon hung in the sky, and when Lin Yuan looked at the bright moon, he felt that the bright moon was within reach. But when he reached out, the bright moon felt like it was the furthest distance in the world. Lin Yuan looked at the bright moon for a night until dawn broke and the sun and moon alternated. Lin Yuan suddenly comprehended something while the sun and moon alternated, and a willpower rune that looked like the alternation of yin and yang appeared in Lin Yuan's spiritual world. Lin Yuan closed his eyes and felt the willpower rune that was born from the sun and moon alternating. Ling Xiao's eyes were wide open. Even if Ling Xiao lost his 7 emotions, he couldn't help but want to curse. What a freaking genius. This kid on my blue jade Pegasus actually comprehended a willpower rune while looking at the sunrise. When did willpower runes become so easy to comprehend? If Ling Xiao didn't have a willpower rune and Lin Yuan was extremely close, Ling Xiao wouldn't have been able to sense the formation of Lin Yuan's willpower rune. However, Ling Xiao didn't know that Lin Yuan had more than one willpower rune. There were 3 willpower runes in Lin Yuan's mind, and they were constantly flying around Lin Yuan's spiritual energy. Chapter 88. Ling Xiao was amazed at Lin Yuan's talent. Lin Yuan had comprehended a willpower rune just by looking at a sunrise, and Ling Xiao couldn't help but want to trample on Lin Yuan. However, Ling Xiao circulated his spiritual power, which was suffused with a cyclone, to isolate the air currents in the sky. It allowed Lin Yuan to be in the most suitable environment to comprehend and silently guard him. When Lin Yuan opened his eyes, Ling Xiao withdrew his spiritual power and said to Lin Yuan seriously, "After comprehending a willpower rune, you will be one step closer to becoming a fantasy breed. Now that you have comprehended the willpower rune, you are one step closer to becoming a fantasy breed. However, remember this. If you want your Fae to reach the 3rd transformation of Fantasy V, don't let it evolve into a fantasy breed after reaching platinum." When Lin Yuan heard Ling Xiao's words, he couldn't help but ask, "What if I want to reach Fantasy V? I don't know how to achieve Fantasy V, but it is best to evolve my Fae's quality to legend at gold grade and transform it into a fantasy breed. Otherwise, unless I have a great fortuitous encounter, I will be stuck at Fantasy 3 for the rest of my life." Lin Yuan remembered Ling Xiao's words. These words were very precious to a combat class spirit chi professional who had just comprehended a willpower rune. If I can evolve a bronze Fae to legend and evolve it into a fantasy breed, will I have a chance to reach the 5th transformation of Fantasy V? Ling Xiao took a deep breath and glanced at Lin Yuan. "Do you think it is as easy to evolve a bronze Fae to legend or a gold Fae to legend?" "It is more than 100 times harder to evolve a bronze Fae to legend than a gold Fae to legend. Even a class 4 creation master might not be able to do it even if they go all out. Furthermore, do you think that willpower runes are so easy to obtain? Even among the Radiance 100's younger generation, not everyone has a fantasy breed. Most of them aren't stuck at legend but at the willpower rune. Indeed, becoming a member of the Radiance 100 sequence would allow one to enjoy the Radiance Federation's resources, and the Creation Master's resources would be ample. Even if a gold Fae couldn't evolve to legend, it shouldn't be a problem to evolve to legend at platinum." However, Lin Yuan didn't feel that a willpower rune was difficult. The arrival of his 3 willpower runes was as smooth as drinking water. It was so natural. Ling Xiao's words reminded Lin Yuan of something. Lin Yuan had always subconsciously regarded the difficulty of evolving phase above bronze to legend as the same. Whether it was bronze, silver, or gold, as long as the spirit energy was in place, it would be successful with the right combination of spirit materials. But now Lin Yuan realized that he was wrong. This situation was only suitable for him and not other creation masters. Lin Yuan didn't have to worry about evolving phase to legend, but he didn't have any good solutions for his source-type life form, Red Thorn. It could be said that Red Thorn's evolution was a huge problem that Lin Yuan was facing. Even now he did not have any good ideas. After flying for 1 day and 1 night, he could already see the royal capital's silhouette under the rising sun. The majestic royal capital was very magnificent, and under the rising sun, Lin Yuan's heart was filled with lofty sentiments. Royal Capital, I Lin Yuan am coming. Yo, isn't this the Radiance 100 sequences Lord Overflowing Sea? The Radiance 100 should be participating in the trial mission now. Why is Lord Overflowing Sea here at the Leaning Moon Mountain? The one speaking was a youth with thin lips. When he spoke, he might have a sincere smile on his face and his actions were passionate, but his true feelings and passion couldn't conceal that kind of fake feeling. Cheng Rui looked at the Radiance 100 sequences Lord Overflowing Sea, Long Tao, who was standing beside him with an arrogant expression. Lin Yuan felt the pressure increase. Long Tao might be the Radiance 100 sequences Lord Overflowing Sea and a powerful combat class spirit chi professional. At the same time, he was also an extremely talented creation master. Cheng Rui's combat ability couldn't be compared with Long Tao's, but in terms of creation master talent, he might not have competed with Long Tao before, but he was certain that he was stronger than Long Tao. After all, he was known as the most talented creation master of the younger generation and had the title of Feng Yang when he was just a Class 2 creation master. Long Tao didn't even look at Cheng Rui. Instead, he looked at the elder standing behind Cheng Rui and said, Lord Overflowing Sea, since you aren't being sincere, then don't call me that. Since the title Lord Overflowing Sea isn't sincere, then don't call me that. I have never liked to play around. A Class 2 creation master already has a title, and we are around the same age. Why don't the Creation Master Association give me, Long Tao, a title too? Long Tao's words had a hidden meaning. He wasn't just targeting Cheng Rui, but also the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association that was standing behind Cheng Rui. Long Tao wasn't the only one dissatisfied with the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association's actions. The Royal Capital's Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy was also dissatisfied. No matter how high one's potential was, once one reached that status, one would naturally be given a glorious title. To be given a title at Class 2 and to proclaim that one had the #1 talent among the younger generation of creation masters, it would definitely make many talented youths feel dissatisfied. Cheng Rui's face immediately turned pale. The elder standing behind Cheng Rui quickly said, Long kid, your words are too much. Little dragon, you've gone too far with your words. Cheng Rui is indeed capable and worthy of this title. The elder behind Cheng Rui was the vice president of the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association and had accumulated prestige for a long time. He was currently choking on Long Tao's words. However, with Long Tao's status, even he didn't dare to reprimand Long Tao for being the Radiance 100's #3 seat. Furthermore, Long Tao was standing beside the dean of the Royal Capital's Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy. The Royal Capital's Creation Master Association and the Royal Capital's Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy had always been in a competitive relationship. If Long Tao said a few more words, this old fellow who had been competing with him for many years would probably join the battle. Long Tao still had the same expression and didn't even look at Cheng Rui. A few days ago, I successfully passed the Class 3 Creation Master exam at the Ascending Dragon City's Creation Master Association. If Cheng Rui is capable enough to accept this title, I wonder if I can also obtain the title that the Creation Master Association prepared in advance? However, even if the Creation Master Association prepared a title, I will not accept it. Once I become a Class 4 Creation Master, I will naturally take the title that belongs to me. Long Tao's words were like slaps after slaps. There was nothing wrong with his words, but they were all ruthlessly slapping Cheng Rui's face. Long Tao's words caused the vice president of the Creation Master Association's face to turn green and pale, and he had a displeased expression. But in the end, Long Tao's words weren't wrong. Had it not been for the Moon Empress accepting a disciple, no matter how talented Cheng Rui was, he wouldn't have prepared a title at Class 2. He had prepared a title just to solidify his reputation as a young creation master. But now Long Tao was already a Class 3 creation master. Even if Cheng Rui had the potential to become a Class 3 creation master, he was ultimately not a Class 3 creation master. The vice president of the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association didn't look at Cheng Rui with as much confidence as before. However, after thinking about it, the Moon Empress' acceptance of a disciple was ultimately her choice. The Moon Empress only had a single thought as to who she would choose. Chapter 89. The Dean of the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy stood there and was spinning 2 jade spheres in his hand. He looked at the Creation Master Association's vice president and said, Old thing. The Royal Capital's Creation Master Association can't even nurture creation masters better than our academy. Therefore, the title of number 1 creation master among the youth generation doesn't belong to your association, but our academy. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man holding the jade ball laughed out loud. This laughter was very forthright, and it sounded like it came from the bottom of his heart. However, it was also this laughter that angered the Creation Master Association's vice president to tremble slightly. It was obvious that he was rather angry. Old thing, what is there to be happy about? After all, Long Tao is a registered Class 3 Creation Master in our Ascending Dragon City's Creation Master Association. He is also considered a member of our Creation Master Association. The Dean of the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy stopped spinning the jade sphere in his hand and turned around with a flabbergasted expression. You rotten old man, you are too shameless. How can you say such things? Why don't you ask if the Ascending Dragon City's Creation Master Association is the same as your Royal Capital's Creation Master Association? If that's the case, then all the Federation students are also our Academy students. The Creation Master Associations in the various cities were in a competitive relationship. Each city's Creation Master Association would strive for the city's Creation Master resources. Whichever city's Creation Master exam was the same as being recorded in the city's Creation Master resources. The Royal Capital's Creation Master Association might be located in the Royal Capital and was just like the headquarters of the various Creation Master Associations. However, the actual situation wasn't like this. Instead of saying that it was the headquarters of the various Creation Master Associations, it was better to say that it was the number 1 rival of the various Creation Master Associations. The two elders had immediately started arguing at the foot of the Leaning Moon Mountain. It made Cheng Rui and Long Tao feel rather awkward. Cheng Rui didn't dare to mention that he was the number 1 Creation Master among the youth generation in front of Long Tao. In fact, when he thought about his title, he didn't feel as proud as before and felt rather ashamed. However, Long Tao obviously didn't plan to let Cheng Rui off so easily. I saw your interview on the Star Web. Your appearance on the Star Web is different from your current appearance. You look like a leader of the youth generation on the Star Web. Long Tao's words were faint, but there was no doubt that these words were more like a heavy punch than the previous slap. Cheng Rui was so angry that his face turned from green to purple. Long Tao, don't go too far. You are 1 year older than me. 1 year later, I will also become a Class 3 Creation Master. Your Creation Master talent might not be better than mine. He's just a year older than me. If Long Tao had been interested in talking to Cheng Rui before, he didn't even have the slightest interest in talking to him now. A person who couldn't even face his own weaknesses and instead looked for excuses. In Long Tao's eyes, such behavior was already the performance of a weakling. After Long Tao entered the Radiance 100 sequence, the competitors he faced were generally a few years older than him. The oldest among them was 10 years older than him. This was because the Radiance 100 could only stay for 10 years at most. Long Tao had overcome all obstacles along the way and had used 4 years to ascend to the 3rd seat. His Creation Master methods hadn't been neglected either. It was because Long Tao never found an excuse for his failure. Instead, he faced failure head-on, analyzed it, and finally cherished it. He cherished it because the number of failures was getting lesser and nearing zero. Cheng Rui's method was exactly what Long Tao despised. You can't be thinking of saying that life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully the young for being poor, right? The words that Cheng Rui wanted to say were stuck in Long Tao's throat again. At this moment, Cheng Rui finally understood that he couldn't win against Long Tao with words. He would only be asking for trouble if he continued. Cheng Rui had never interacted with Long Tao before. Long Tao had always taken the domineering and fierce route during the competition, and he wasn't good with words during interviews. Cheng Rui didn't expect him to be a chatterbox that could anger someone to death. At this moment, a gentle and clear voice echoed from MT Clear Moon. I'm here to meet Elder Du and Elder Meng on the Moon Empress orders. This gentle voice made Long Tao narrow his eyes. The voice sounded as though it was right beside him, but it also felt as though it was nowhere to be found. After calming down for a long time, Long Tao still couldn't hear the source of the voice. On the other hand, Elder Du, the Vice President of the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association, and Elder Meng, the Dean of the Royal Capital's Advanced Spirit Chi University's Creation Master Academy, spoke to the sky. Thank you, Mystic Moon Envoy. As Elder Du and Elder Meng's voices echoed, it was unknown when a man wearing a silver robe was standing on the tunnel at the foot of MT Clear Moon. He was walking over unhurriedly, but in just 2 steps, he had already traversed a distance of dozens of steps and arrived in front of Elder Du and Elder Meng. Elder Du, Elder Meng is still as graceful as before, but you can't go up the mountain now. We still need to wait for a noble person to arrive. After speaking, Mystic Moon shut his mouth. Elder Du and Elder Meng looked at each other and saw shock in each other's eyes. Mystic Moon was a king-class expert and had already caught a glimpse of the pinnacle of king-class. His contracted phase were mainly spiritual type, even though he was just a support-type spirit chi professional. If an expert of the same rank were to say that the most troublesome enemy they would face, it would definitely be a spirit chi professional with a spiritual type fey. Putting aside Mystic Moon's strength, he was one of the Moon Empress' 2 Moon Envoys. No matter where he went, he would represent the Moon Empress' will. Mystic Moon might look gentle, but his actions were abnormally domineering. He was like a blade that was hidden in the pure white snow, invisible and formless. However, when he made contact, his head would be separated from his body. Mystic Moon might not be as unreasonable as Cold Moon, but he was abnormally arrogant. Making the two of them wait here for a noble person? The word noble person meant that the visitor should be rather familiar with the Moon Empress and could be considered as one of them. Otherwise, he would only be called a noble guest and not a noble person. To be able to bear the word nobled from Mystic Moon, it was imaginable what kind of status this visitor had. Elder Du and Elder Meng pulled Cheng Rue and Long Tao, who were still quarreling, to the side. Even Long Tao, who was the Radiance 100's third seat, had withdrawn his aura and looked abnormally obedient. At that moment, a snow-white Pegasus with sharp blue jade-like horns and blue jade-like wings flew over from the distance and headed straight for the Leaning Moon Mountain. Mystic Moon, who had a gentle but expressionless face, pulled up a smile. At that moment, the blue jade Pegasus had already landed. Ling Xiao brought Lin Yuan down from the Pegasus back. Elder Du and Elder Meng only glanced at Ling Xiao for a moment before looking away. They fixed their eyes on Lin Yuan, who was standing at the side. Lin Yuan's hair was a little messy due to the wind, but when he stood under the sunlight, he had an indescribable aura. Chapter 90. Of course, Elder Du and Elder Meng knew Ling Xiao. However, even the city lord of Redbud City was not worthy of Xian Yu's title. In that case, the only person that Xian Yu would refer to as a benefactor was the youth standing beside Ling Xiao. Apart from Ling Xiao, Lin Yuan could clearly feel 5 pairs of eyes staring at him. Feeling the gazes coming towards him, he didn't know these people. However, out of courtesy, Lin Yuan nodded in acknowledgement and took the opportunity to greet them. Ling Xiao wanted to introduce them, but Xian Yu's gentle and clear voice rang out. "Everyone is here. Follow me to the Leaning Moon Mountain. Lin Yuan, come to my side. Let's go together." Lin Yuan had long noticed the silver-robed man who had spoken. The silver-robed man's aura was like a deep sea that had no ripples on its surface despite the turbulent undercurrents. But he didn't expect that this silver-robed man would actually recognize him. Lin Yuan looked at Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao's throat moved a little, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan simply walked to Mystic Moon's side. Mystic Moon let out a bright smile and led Lin Yuan up the mountain. Ling Xiao, Elder Meng and Elder Du walked together while Long Tao and Cheng Rue stood on either side. The 5 of them followed Lin Yuan and Mystic Moon. At this time, Elder Du and Elder Meng looked at Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao greeted Elder Du and Elder Meng expressionlessly. Just as Elder Meng and Elder Du thought. Elder Meng and Elder Du looked at Lin Yuan with a complicated gaze. It turned out that the young man who had lit up her eyes just now was also here to pick peaches. Looking at Mystic Moon's behavior, could it be that the Moon Empress already had feelings for this youth called Lin Yuan? Long Tao looked at Lin Yuan with a probing gaze. Cheng Rue looked at Lin Yuan with jealousy and complicated eyes. After Elder Meng and Elder Du asked Ling Xiao a few questions, they understood Lin Yuan's identity. It turned out that Lin Yuan was the fellow who had passed the Class 2 Creation Master exam in Redbud City. After the Creation Master Association was first reformed in Redbud City, it was now implemented in the Radiance Federation's 32 cities. What was the deeper meaning behind this? Elder Du and Elder Meng were well aware of this, but they didn't expect someone to meet such stringent requirements. And this person came so quickly. Long Tao's expression was calm, but Cheng Rue's face was obviously filled with dissatisfaction. Cheng Rue gritted his teeth. He was just a young kid who had just passed the Class 2 Creation Master exam. What was so great about him? Perhaps it was just a moment of luck. Now that he was about to have the ability to pass the Class 3 Creation Master exam, wouldn't it be as easy to crush this kid? Looking at Cheng Rue's expression, Long Tao burst into laughter. Why don't you calculate how much younger he is than you? Cheng Rui's face was full of expressions, especially after hearing Long Tao's words. At this moment he looked as if he had eaten 30 lemons and 30 bitter gourds. It had to be said that the Leaning Moon Mountain was full of sceneries. Lin Yuan opened True Data. Along the way, apart from talking to Mystic Moon, he saw gold phase everywhere on the mountain. He even saw plenty of platinum phase. Most of these phase were plant species phase, and one could occasionally see some butterflies, dragonflies, bees and small birds. Rare spiritual objects that were rarely seen in the outside world could be seen everywhere in the Leaning Moon Mountain. Xian Yu said. A few more steps and we will reach the Radiant Moon Palace. Xian Yu's words weren't just for Lin Yuan, but also for the people behind her. After passing through the mountain's gallery, Lin Yuan saw a palace that looked as though it was made of fluorite. The palace's main body was pure white like white jade, but it was emitting lustrous light just like the light emitted from the moon. In front of the palace, there were 2 trees that were close to 10 meters tall. The trees were blooming with clusters of small gold and silver flowers, and the flowers were pressing down on the branches. These 2 trees were actually silver stamen gold luster caches. Lin Yuan felt as though he was going to fall when he saw True Data. These 2 silver stamen gold luster caches were both diamond rank level 10. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that these 2 silver stamen gold luster caches' quality had actually reached legend. Such cardinal treasures were planted at the palace's entrance without anyone contracting them, and they were just a scenery in front of the palace. This was truly unimaginable to Lin Yuan. When Xian Yu saw Lin Yuan looking at these 2 silver stamen gold luster caches, she took the initiative to introduce them to Lin Yuan. These 2 caches are rather good looking, so they were planted here. The silver stamen gold luster caches are rather strange, but they don't have any fragrance. However, these osmanthus flowers are extremely delicious when used to make osmanthus honey. Cold Moon is very good at making osmanthus honey. I will get Cold Moon to scoop a bowl for you in a while. Phase like the silver stamen gold luster caches were already beyond Lin Yuan's knowledge. With True Data, Lin Yuan could only know what it was called. Lin Yuan might not be clear, but Ling Xiao, Elder Du and Elder Meng all knew what it was. Xian Yu said that a bowl of osmanthus honey was casually given to Lin Yuan. Even these 3 experts with high authority couldn't help but want to try and see if they could ask for a portion, even if it was just a few drops. The silver stamen gold luster cache's nectar was a good thing to wash away impurities in the body. When others used a drop, they would have to dissolve it in a cup of water and consume it a few times. If Lin Yuan were to drink this bowl of silver stamen gold luster caches, he would probably be able to wash away all the impurities in his body. There were only 2 silver stamen gold luster caches in the world, and they were both in the hands of the Moon Empress, which was planted in front of the Radiant Moon Palace. Every year, the Moon Empress would give 10 drops to the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Chi University and the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association. However, a few dozen years' worth of it was probably not enough to make a bowl. Xian Yu, I was the one who made the osmanthus honey, but you are giving it to someone else. If someone is to give it, it should be me. To Lin Yuan, the speaker's voice was as cold as the bone-chilling icy water in a cold pool. Lin Yuan looked at the woman and noticed that the blue-robed woman was also sizing him up. Xian Yu let out a bright smile. All right, Cold Moon, bring them in to see the Moon Empress. I still have a mission for the Moon Empress. Cold Moon nodded and said to everyone, follow me into the Radiant Moon Palace. After entering the Radiant Moon Palace, Lin Yuan felt that every corner of the Radiant Moon Palace's front corridor was filled with elegance. There was a high platform on the front corridor and there were 2 boxes on the table. Cold Moon pulled Lin Yuan to her side and looked at Elder Du and Elder Meng. The Moon Empress means that there is a treasure in each of the 2 boxes on the high platform. Both sides can let the younger generation come up and pick the box. The treasure in the box will be the Moon Empress reward. Cold Moon's words made Elder Du and Elder Meng's eyes lit up. At the same time, they couldn't understand why there were only 2 brocade boxes when there were 3 people in the younger generation. Lin Yuan stood beside Cold Moon and watched calmly. Chapter 91. Long Tao and Cheng Rui stepped forward. After receiving instructions from their elders, they walked toward the high platform. Just as he stood on the high platform, one of the 4 maidservants who had been standing in the 4 corners of the hall stepped forward. In a flash, he appeared on the high platform. The woman looked to be in her 30s, but she gave off a delicate feeling. I am one of the tea attendants of the Radiant Moon Palace, and my name is Kai Cha. I am here to inform you that the treasure in the golden box is better than the treasure in the gray box. With that, he bowed to Tsang Yu. After Tsang Yu nodded, he retreated to the edge of the platform. He didn't return to his previous spot in the corner of the hall. One of the two boxes on the platform was gold and the other was gray. Lin Yuan saw Long Tao and Cheng Rui's hands reaching for the golden box. At this moment, Long Tao's spiritual qi shook, causing Cheng Rui to take a few steps back. He then opened the golden box. The moment the golden box was opened, Lin Yuan smelled a sweet scent. There was a light purple bead in the box. The bead was about the size of a thumb. Although it was a light purple pearl, it emitted a purple light. The sweet taste from before didn't seem to come from the bead itself, but from the soft light emitted by the bead. Beside the light purple bead, there was a small wooden token. Apart from these two items there was nothing else. At this moment Kai Cha, who was standing by the side, said, "This treasure is a pearl produced by the purple coral shellfish when it reaches diamond grade. It is an excellent treasure for water-type phase and has a chance to increase the possibility of water-type phase breaking through." Kai Cha's words caused Long Tao's calm expression to turn grave. His breathing also became heavier. His eyes were filled with extreme joy. Lin Yuan looked at this light purple pearl and could not help but click his tongue. This was not only a diamond spiritual ingredient but also a diamond spiritual ingredient from the deep sea. The shell fei also had another name, the deep sea treasure. The reason was that shell species phase could produce pearls, and only experts were qualified to explore the deep sea. Just this point alone made the pearls produced by the purple coral shellfish a priceless treasure, not to mention the amazing effects of the purple coral shellfish pearl. Lin Yuan couldn't estimate the price of the purple coral shell pearls. However, just by looking at the envy in Ling Zhao's eyes, Lin Yuan already knew how rare the purple coral shell pearl was. After Long Tao took the purple coral shellfish pearl, he picked up the wooden tablet beside the purple coral shellfish pearl and saw a small sword engraved on it. At this moment, Kai Cha continued, "This wooden token has a small sword engraved on it, and it is a sword token of the Radiant Moon Palace. You can compete with the sword token holder of the Radiant Moon Palace, and the sword token holder's strength will be comparable to yours. If you win, you can exchange this sword token for another treasure. If you lose, it's nothing, it's just a competition." Long Tao turned to look at Senior Meng, who nodded at him. Long Tao looked at Kai Cha and asked, "I wonder if you are referring to a competition between combat class spirit chi adepts or creation masters?" Kai Cha said with a faint smile. "Since it is a sword token, it is naturally a contest between combat class spirit chi occupations. If the token is drawn with a vessel, it will be a contest between creation masters." Long Tao squeezed the token in his hand and said in a clear voice, "I am willing to accept the contest." Ever since Long Tao obtained the purple coral shellfish pearl, Cheng Rui, who was standing beside Long Tao, looked at Long Tao with eyes so gloomy that it was about to drip water. However, no one was paying attention to Cheng Rui's expression. Everyone's eyes were gathered on Long Tao, especially Lin Yuan. He didn't expect to be able to witness a fight between the Radiance 100 sequence number 3. After watching this duel, Lin Yuan knew that he almost knew what the combat power of the Radiance 100 sequence's peak experts was. He had seen the contest between White Devil and Unknown Flame. However, in the final battle, when White Devil's rival Swallowtail Butterfly was released from the cage and transformed into the disaster Swallowtail Butterfly, everything had ended in a crushing manner. Furthermore, White Devil might be sequence number 18 of the Radiance 100, but a healing class spirit chi professional strategic significance was usually greater than their combat significance. However, Long Tao was the Radiance 100 sequence number 3 and had the title Overflowing Sea. He was a true combat class spirit chi professional. Kai Cha waved the sword token in her hand. The maidservant attire that was similar to Kai Cha's at the four corners of the hall were now standing on the platform. Lin Yuan looked over and noticed that the maidservants standing at the four corners of the hall looked exactly the same. Perhaps the only difference was the appearance of the hair ornaments on her head. When Cold Moon saw Lin Yuan's appearance, she gave a rare explanation. "Kai Cha, Xie Kai Cha, and Yin Cha are the Radiant Moon Palace's tea attendants. They are four sisters and the Moon Empress picked them up 30 years ago. They have always been serving in the Radiant Moon Palace." Lin Yuan nodded. However, he didn't understand why Cold Moon was introducing the Radiant Moon Palace's members in such detail. It was as though he was going to get to know them in the future. "The four of us will share this sword token. I am the strongest and the three of them are about the same strength. You can choose one of us as your opponent," Kai Cha said to Long Tao. Long Tao didn't hesitate and chose Kai Cha, who was currently speaking and was also the strongest. When looking at this scene, Lin Yuan felt that Kai Cha's thoughts weren't simple. This simple statement was an overt scheme. But under such circumstances, Long Tao's temper and pride, as well as the people standing around him, would undoubtedly make Long Tao choose the strongest among the four of them. When Elder Meng saw that Long Tao and Kai Cha were about to fight, he quickly said to Cold Moon, who was standing beside Lin Yuan, "Dark Moon Emissary, fighting in the Radiant Moon Palace might cause damage to the items in the Radiant Moon Palace." Long Tao did not hold back and seriously injured the tea attendant. "What should we do?" This wasn't Elder Meng's first time in the Radiant Moon Palace, so he naturally knew about the 4 tea attendants. Every time he met the Moon Empress, he would be able to drink the spirit tea brewed by the 4 tea attendants. However, Elder Meng had never heard of the 4 weak-looking tea attendants fighting. Song Yu replied coldly, "This palace has been hardened by the Fantasy V unyielding diamond resplendent tortoise. If it could be destroyed so easily by a junior, the Radiant Moon Palace would have long been destroyed. As for the competition, it was decided by the Moon Empress." After speaking, Song Yu circulated the spiritual power in her body and enveloped herself and Lin Yuan within the Qi whirlpool. When Elder Meng heard Song Yu's words, he naturally wouldn't go against the Moon Empress' wishes. Elder Du pulled Qing Rue and left some space for Long Tao and Kai Cha. Lin Yuan heard Song Yu's words clearly. Song Yu wasn't polite to Elder Meng at all. A single order from the Moon Empress was enough for Elder Meng to not dare to say anything else. After all, Elder Meng was the Dean of the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Qi University's Creation Master Academy. He had overwhelming authority in the Royal Capital, but he didn't dare to show it here. Lin Yuan immediately expressed his gratitude to Song Yu for using the Qi whirlpool to protect him. Chapter 92. Kai Cha and Long Tao circulated their spirit Qi at the same time. Long Tao summoned a shark-like fey that was about 2 to 3 meters long, but it had dragon patterns on its body. Under true data, Lin Yuan recognized that it was a Platinum 6/Epic Shark dragon-eating shark. Beside Kai Cha, a tea tree with white camellia blossoms appeared. Lin Yuan looked over and realized that although it was also a Platinum fey, Kai Cha had summoned a fantasy breed. Furthermore, this fantasy breed tea tree had reached the Fantasy 2 quality. Kai Cha called out softly to the tea tree, "Dark Dream Fragrant Tea, Tool Transformation." With Kai Cha's yell, the Platinum/Fantasy 2 tea tree turned into a 5-string pipa. It landed in Kai Cha's hands. Kai Cha plucked the strings with her bare hands and the big and small strings were noisy. The string notes carried the might of a magnificent army and blasted at Long Tao with a piercing sound. Long Tao quickly jumped onto the reef dragon eater's back, but the shark dragon eater was still injured by the string notes. A bone-deep wound appeared on the shark dragon eater's body, causing it to roar in pain. Long Tao's eyes immediately turned sharp and serious. The damage from Kai Cha's string notes let Long Tao know how dangerous this woman was under her seemingly weak appearance. Kai Cha smiled lightly and continued to pluck the strings with her fingers. Long Tao quickly ordered the shark dragon eater to summon a wave to block the damage from the string notes. At that moment, Long Tao circulated his spiritual power again. 2 half-meter-tall figures, one blue and one red, appeared on the field. Lin Yuan looked at the 2 fays and realized that they were actually 2 deep blue dragon jellyfish. These 2 deep blue dragon jellyfish might have the dragon species bloodline, but they weren't considered dragon species fays. These 2 deep blue dragon jellyfish were 2 deep blue jellyfish that had been nurtured with dragon blood since they were young and had transformed into fantasy breeds. These 2 deep blue dragon jellyfish of different colors were both Platinum/Fantasy I/Fantasy breeds. 2 Fantasy I/Fantasy breeds were summoned by Long Tao, and it immediately started raining heavily on the battlefield. The raindrops formed lines that carried the deep sea's coldness and killing intent. The torrential rain was like needles that seemed to pierce through all life it came into contact with. Under this overwhelming killing intent, Lin Yuan only saw Kai Cha changing her hand gesture. She lifted the pipa above her shoulder and plucked the strings. The pipa music formed a world around Kai Cha, and fragrant camellias bloomed within the world, rapidly replenishing the spirit qi in Kai Cha's body. Kai Cha's eyes turned solemn. She formed a claw with her hands and grabbed the zither strings. She twisted it forcefully and played for a few moments before the zither notes that were gathered at her fingertips were dispersed. The sound of the zither carried an unstoppable momentum, directly breaking through the boundary formed by the chaotic rain. It crashed into the 2 deep blue dragon jellyfish and the shark. The 2 deep blue dragon jellyfish and the shark dragon eater held up the water together. However, in the end, the unstoppable and murderous Guqin music still managed to break through, and the two deep blue dragon jellyfish were slightly injured. The shark Dracophagus was also severely injured and lost its ability to fight. Kai-Cha flipped her pipa and sat on her shoulder blade as she chuckled. The Radiance 100's third seat might be called overturning the sea, but he is also known as the Son of Dragon. His contracted phase are all dragon species phase, but if he doesn't use his trump card in battle, he won't be able to obtain the sword token and exchange for treasures. Long Tao's aura suddenly changed, and the violent spiritual chi instantly climbed to the peak. A huge shadow appeared behind Long Tao. Long Taoxing said, "If you don't have any other abilities, then I, Long Tao, will definitely take the sword token." The third seat naturally has the ability to defend the glory of the third seat. Following Long Tao's words, the massive figure behind him finally revealed its full appearance. This was a huge sea dragon that was nearly 30 meters long. It looked like a prehistoric ancient sea dragon. It looked somewhat like a sea king dragon. When Lin Yuan saw this dragon species Fei, he felt his blood boil. This dragon species Fei was Long Tao's famed Fei, and it was also the reason why he was called the Overflowing Sea. Lin Yuan had previously seen the Radiance 100's information on the star web, but when he saw the full appearance of this massive creature, he felt as though he was looking at the vast and boundless phenomena of ancient times. Lin Yuan used true data to check the sea dragon Fei's name. Fei name: Sea King Cretaceous Dragon, Fei species, Mosasaur species / Imperial Dragon species, Fei grade, Platinum, 10 out of 10, Fei type, Water, Fei quality, Fantasy AI abilities Frowny Face Whirlpool, stir up the water causing the water to be filled with extremely strong currents. 8 Dragon Shadows. Dragon shadows float and transform into 8 dragon shadows. Each dragon shadow has 60% of the main body's attributes. Sea Bite. Manipulate the ocean currents to form a bite. The bite force is equivalent to the main body's bite force. Sea Emperor Dragon Breath. Spit out a destructive breath that is unique to Imperial dragons. Wrath of the Ocean. Activate all the hidden power in the ocean to carry out a destructive tremor. The extreme tremor in the water can shatter everything in the sea region. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Water Control. Use the power of water to be meticulous and control the flow of water. Extremity of the Sea. Gather water elements and form rivers. All rivers flow into the sea, forming a controlled sea region. What kind of name was the Sea King Cretaceous Dragon? It was called the Sea King, and it was crowned with the name of the Cretaceous era's dragon roaming the world. It was indeed worthy of being called the most noble Fei among the dragon species, the Imperial Dragon species. Cold Moon looked at Lin Yuan and noticed that he was watching the duel attentively. She nodded with satisfaction. After the Sea King Cretaceous Dragon appeared, there was a deafening roar. Water elements rapidly gathered in all directions and immediately formed a massive sea region. Kai-Cha quickly played her pipa and opened up a boundary in the sea region so that it wouldn't be devoured by the seawater. However, the moment the sea region was formed, whirlpools appeared. The originally irregular whirlpools were like pairs of demonic hands that seized souls from the bottom of the sea, sending everything on the surface of the sea to the bottom of the sea. Lin Yuan's eyes contracted. The Sea King Cretaceous Dragon's attack was a perfect combination of its exclusive skill, water control, extremity of the sea, and the whirlpool. In just an instant the situation was under control. At this moment, Kai-Cha's forehead was perspiring, and the pulling force of the water currents was making Kai-Cha exhausted. Kai-Cha thought to herself, if this carried on, she wouldn't have the ability to resist and would be devoured by the seawater. Kai-Cha circulated her spiritual chi and a small black beast immediately appeared in this self-formed domain. This small beast looked like a hornless deer and had big eyes. The moment it appeared, it spat out a cloud of white mist. The white mist blew onto Kai-Cha's fingertips and flowed into the pipa strings. Kai-Cha played her pipa thrice consecutively, causing the sound of the pipa to have the feeling of breaking a silver bottle. At this moment Long Tao yelled out, "White use sea bite." In an instant, the water currents around Kai-Cha seemed to have turned into sharp mouths. Chapter 93. Water had always been the most gentle existence in this world. However, when the Sea King Cretaceous Dragon executed its sea bite ability, a sharp mouth formed by seawater appeared outside of Kai-Cha's domain. This sharp mouth might be formless and intangible, but one could roughly see the shape of the sharp mouth from the stirred water. The size of this sharp mouth was similar to the Sea King Cretaceous Dragon's mouth, and the pressure caused the water to emit an ear-piercing sound. The sound was similar to metal plates colliding. At this critical moment, Kai-Cha hurriedly dispersed the gas that she had mixed into the zither's neck into the zither's neck. The zither's neck suddenly tightened. At this moment, the violent destructive pressure that was mixed with the might of the sharp mouth nearly caused Kai-Cha's domain to deform. Lin Yuan could clearly see that the seawater had already seeped into Kai-Cha's domain. There were obvious teeth marks on the domain, and the seawater was seeping in through these teeth marks. However, as Kai-Cha strummed the zither with all her might, the domain withstood the pressure and rapidly mended the cracks. Lin Yuan's heart trembled. Sea Bite was a divine ability in the water region. If the Sea King Cretaceous dragon wanted to tear its prey apart, it didn't need to engage in close combat. This was because the water in the water region could turn into the Sea King Cretaceous dragon's sharp mouth at any moment. The Sea King Cretaceous dragon's sea bite was formless and intangible, and it could only be defended. Furthermore, the Sea King Cretaceous dragon's sea bite ability wasn't the pressure from the bite, but the penetrative ability from the sharp teeth. It was the force from the sharp teeth that created a hole in Kai-Cha's domain. Long Tao stood on the Sea King Cretaceous dragon's back and looked at Kai-Cha. "Shall we stop here? Your domain has already been broken, and I am not adept at controlling my strength in combat." Long Tao wasn't reserved with his words as he immediately stated that he controlled his strength and didn't wish to injure Kai-Cha. When Kai-Cha heard this, the grave expression on her face disappeared. Instead, she chuckled. "It is too boring to determine the outcome just like this. You are not adept at controlling your strength, but I am." After speaking, the black deer-like beast's body lit up with a dark night luster. It rapidly devoured all the light in the sea region before letting out a crisp cry. The light of the night was directed towards Kai-Cha's finger. In an instant, Kai-Cha's zither music separated the raging sea region's vast water. Wherever the sound of the guqin passed, the water elements disappeared without a trace. Zither sound severing rain. The seemingly gentle and misty sound of the zither made Long Tao feel that everything was strange. The two lightly injured deep blue dragon jellyfish floated beside Long Tao. Together with the Sea King Cretaceous dragon, they formed a water screen that covered the sky. The sound of the zither hit the water curtain, and the night fog dispersed. But the all-pervasive music was like a drizzle. It melted into the water, but it cut through the water and came out through it. At this moment, Long Tao decisively ordered the Sea King Cretaceous dragon. "What?" 8 dragon shadows. In an instant, 8 illusory dragon shadows appeared in front of the Cretaceous Sea King dragon. 8 dragon shadows charged its Xianyin and released Sea Bite at the same time. But this string note still shattered the 8 dragon shadows. The aftermath also severely injured the blue dragon mother, and Long Tao took it back into his spiritual space. Long Tao said in a cold voice, "Since there is no need to hold back, then I shall not hold back." 3 of his fays were injured, and Long Tao was truly infuriated. Elder Meng silently cursed and circulated the spiritual power in his body. If Kai-Cha couldn't resist, he would immediately save her. Elder Meng knew how powerful this move of Long Tao's was. Even if he withstood this attack, it wouldn't be easy. The water elements gathered again, and the sea region instantly expanded by more than 2 times. The Sea King Cretaceous dragon's exclusive skills, water controller and extremity of sea, were executed to the extreme. The sea started to stir, and this sort of restlessness wasn't something that a whirlpool could produce. The instant the seawater stirred, Kai-Cha's domain was compressed to a 1-meter radius. Kai-Cha suddenly shouted, "Final move." In an instant, Kai-Cha tossed the dark dream fragrant tea, which had transformed into a pipa, into the sky. The pipa transformed back into the dark dream fragrant tea's original form. The moment the dark dream fragrant tea appeared, its entire body lit up with a green light. The domain that had been compressed to only 1 meter instantly expanded to 10 meters. It was like a piece of pure land in the middle of this vast ocean. However, as the tremors of the sea got more intense, the dark dream fragrant tea's domain immediately shrunk. Kai-Cha circulated all the spirit chi in her body. Dark dream fragrant tea, dream transformation. Night dream beast, dream devourer. When Kai-Cha's nearly boiling spiritual power burst out, the dark dream fragrant tea suddenly shrunk and turned into a 1-leaf tea. The little black beast jumped up, and the moment it swallowed the tea leaf, a natural aura suddenly descended. In an instant, the sea region was compressed, creating a piece of land that could compete with the sea region. After the black deer-like dream beast swallowed the tea, its hornless head instantly grew giant antlers. The antlers were like tea branches that bloomed with white flowers. The black fur on its body instantly turned white and its size doubled. It instantly turned into a white buck that was over 4 meters long. The deer stepped on the ground and the surroundings were covered with green grass. The dream beast and Kai Cha looked at each other and Kai Cha said softly, "Go, go." The dream beast's antlers lit up with green radiance, and it crashed towards the Sea King Cretaceous dragon with overwhelming might. Long Tao didn't allow the Sea King Cretaceous dragon to gather the surrounding water region. White wrath of the ocean. Sea Emperor's dragon breath. At this moment, the sea was truly in motion. As compared to now, the changes in the sea were nothing. At this moment, the rumbling of the restless sea could even be heard by Lin Yuan, who was within the deep blue moon spirit chi defense. Lin Yuan looked on as the wrath of the ocean carried the Sea King Cretaceous dragon's pale white dragon breath and clashed with the white buck. At this moment, Elder Meng, who had been accumulating power, rushed out and supported his spirit chi barrier beside Kai Cha. When the buck crashed into the sea, it was on par with the sea. However, this pale white dragon breath shattered the antlers and crashed towards Kai Cha. This pale white dragon breath only vanished after crashing into Elder Meng's barrier for a long time. Elder Meng's expression was very bad. It wasn't because of how strong Long Tao's attack was, but because he blamed Long Tao for not holding back at all. This battle allowed Lin Yuan to finally understand why the Radiance Federation's Radiance 100 was the Radiance Federation's glory. The third seat's sea overturning power allowed Lin Yuan to understand the pinnacle standard of the younger generation. Lin Yuan knew that he was indeed still far from it. However, Lin Yuan wasn't in a hurry to deny himself, as he had only been an ordinary person who couldn't sense spirit chi for less than 2 months. Chapter 94. Kai Cha stored the injured Fae into her spiritual spatial zone and bowed to Elder Meng to express her thanks. She then said to Long Tao, "I've lost. I'm nearly 10 years older than you, but I don't even have the ability to block a full blow from you." As expected of the third-ranked sequence, Long Tao had used up almost all of his spiritual power in this attack. For a moment he couldn't even stand straight. Long Tao used his hands to support the Sea King Cretaceous dragon and panted heavily. He didn't even have the strength to speak. Long Tao's current state was the most basic symptom of spiritual power exhaustion. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan used Morbius Spirit Gather Goldfish's spirit injection ability. A pure spirit chi shot out from Lin Yuan's hand and landed on Long Tao's body. Long Tao's depleted spiritual power instantly improved. Although it was not enough to recover most of the spiritual energy, the recovered spiritual energy was enough for Long Tao to move normally. Long Tao cupped his fists to express his gratitude. Lin Yuan and Long Tao's eyes met, and he realized that Long Tao was looking at him very carefully. Lin Yuan smiled and returned the greeting with cupped fists. Long Tao then looked at Kai Cha and said, "If I didn't use my final move, I wouldn't have been able to defeat you." Long Tao's words might not sound courteous, but it also showed that he acknowledged Kai Cha's strength. In addition, Lin Yuan noticed that Cold Moon, Elder Meng, Elder Du, and Ling Xiao were all looking at him. Lin Yuan could not help but think that it was really rude of him to replenish Long Tao's spiritual power in such a situation with these experts present. However, Lin Yuan didn't know that they were rather surprised by his ability to instantly replenish spiritual power. When Lin Yuan had used the spirit injection earlier, he hadn't summoned a Fae but had casually released it. Healing type and support type spirit chi professionals could release healing and recovery type abilities without summoning Faes. However, the effects of such a skill would undoubtedly be greatly reduced. But even so, it allowed Long Tao to recover from his extremely weak state due to the depletion of spirit chi. Previously, everyone only knew that Lin Yuan was a young prodigy who had passed the Class 2 Creation Master exam. He did not expect Lin Yuan to have such an impressive support skill. There were very few skills that could directly increase spiritual power. The most common was the Spirit Siphon Goldfish. However, due to the Spirit Siphon Goldfish's characteristics, almost no one would choose it as their contracted Fae. Therefore, when Lin Yuan revealed this ability, even these experts were quite surprised. Even Song Yu's usually cold face had a hint of joy as she spoke to Lin Yuan. A skill that increases spiritual energy can greatly increase one's survivability and combatability in the wild. Very good. Lin Yuan felt a little embarrassed after hearing Song Yu's words. Now Cheng Rui had become the neglected one. Cheng Rui, who was standing behind old Du, looked at Long Tao with a trace of fear in his eyes, compared to his previous gloominess. If Long Tao's combat ability was on someone else, Cheng Rui might not feel anything. However, Long Tao's creation master strength was currently stronger than his. This made Qing Rui realize that it was impossible for him to find trouble with Long Tao. However, when Qing Rui looked at Long Tao, his previous jealousy was now accompanied by the gloominess that had originally been on Long Tao. Lin Yuan sensed Qing Rui's gaze. Lin Yuan, who had lived 2 lifetimes, was no longer a youth. Now that he had met Qing Rui's gaze, he roughly understood that he had been the target of jealousy along the way. Lin Yuan frowned slightly when he saw her gaze. Everything was seen by Tsang. Kai Cha was supposed to hand the sword token to Long Tao for him to exchange for treasures. However, Tsang took a step forward and said, originally, the treasures exchanged for the sword token were some high-grade spiritual ingredients that were similar to the pearls. Originally, the treasures exchanged for the sword token were high-grade spiritual ingredients, which were similar to the pearls. However, since Kai Cha injured 3 of your fays, the reward will be 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster Cash's nectar. Tsang Yu's words immediately made Long Tao reveal a delighted expression. Even Elder Meng had a very radiant smile on his face. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he immediately knew how rare the silver stamen gold luster Cash's nectar was. However, he remembered that the silver-robed man who had brought him up the mountain had said that he would give him a bowl to drink. Back then, Lin Yuan didn't feel anything and thought that it was just a reception. Now that he knew, Lin Yuan didn't dare to casually accept such a precious item. After Tsang Yu finished speaking, she changed the topic and looked at Qing Rui. There is only a gray box left. It's your turn to open it. Qing Rui's face was filled with joy as he quickly opened the box. When he opened the box, he saw a bottle of dark red blood with traces of purple and a token. Just as Qing Rui was about to pick up the bottle of blood, Tsang Yu's words made him immediately withdraw his hand. The blood in this bottle is the blood of a diamond snake species Fey. However, there is a rule for this gray box. If you don't win the contest, not only will you not be able to win the new treasure, but you will also have to leave this bottle of diamond snake blood behind. After speaking, Tsang Yu gave an eye signal to one of the tea attendants. The other 3, including Kai Cha, retreated to the 4 corners of the hall. When Tsang Yu returned to Lin Yuan's side, the tea attendant that was left behind stepped forward and said, "My name is Shi Cha. My name is Shi Cha, I will compete with you." Qing Rui had already picked up the sword token and saw an exquisite vessel drawn on it. It was a contest of creation master's abilities. This immediately gave Qing Rui confidence. However, Qing Rui didn't understand why the treasure in his gray box could only be taken away after winning the contest, but Long Tao didn't use it. He couldn't help but ask, "I don't know why my contest rules are different from before." Shi Cha had a fiery temperament, and when Qing Rui asked, she immediately answered, "Because this is the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace." Shi Cha's temper was simply like a hot pepper. Her words were very irritating. However, Elder Du immediately went forward and said to Shi Cha, "Qing Rui doesn't know the rules? Qing Rui doesn't know the rules. Please forgive him." Qing Rui was originally full of confidence, but Shi Cha's statement made Qing Rui feel a little apprehensive. Lin Yuan couldn't figure out what was going on. At that moment, Tsang Yu was looking at Qing Rui with eyes filled with contempt. When Qing Rui looked at Lin Yuan with such a gaze, Tsang Yu's heart produced a kind of unpleasant emotion. The Moon Empress might not have officially accepted Lin Yuan as a disciple, but not only did Mystic Moon understand the Moon Empress, but Tsang Yu did too. Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple, and it was a fact that was set in stone. This made Tsang Yu feel protective. Even though Qing Rui was just a junior, Tsang Yu didn't ignore him. Tsang Yu had a cold temperament and wasn't someone who would be protective. However, after following the Moon Empress for a long time, she had been influenced by her temperament. Therefore, even though she didn't show it, she still made arrangements for Qing Rui clearly. Because of Qing Rui, Tsang Yu looked at Elder Du, who had brought Qing Rui over, with a slightly unfriendly gaze. Lin Yuan didn't know what Tsang Yu was thinking. Chapter 95. Lin Yuan had never known what level his creation master standard had reached. At the end of the day, Lin Yuan had never come into contact with a proper creation master. Take Elder Ning for example. Lin Yuan only knew that Elder Ning was a Class 4 creation master, but he had never seen Elder Ning's means. Lin Yuan knew that a normal creation master would use spiritual ingredients to enhance a phase quality. However, Lin Yuan had never seen how to mix spiritual ingredients. He had never seen a Class 1 creation master's operation before. Now that he had the chance, he looked at it very seriously. Tsang Yu didn't have much of a reaction. Instead, she found it boring. Therefore, most of their attention was on Lin Yuan. Kai Cha, who was standing in one of the four corners of the hall, looked at Cheng Rui with a ruminating gaze. He didn't know how Cheng Rui offended Song Yu, but he actually chose Shi Cha to stay behind to compete. Shi Cha was the most talented creation master among the four sisters. Even if he had never taken the creation master exam, he was undoubtedly a class 3 creation master. There should be no suspense in the competition. Shi Cha knocked on the high platform with her hand and asked in a shrewd manner. A creation master competition is to increase the phase grade, enhance the phase quality, or heal the phase damaged roots. You can choose how to compete. Cheng Rui was overjoyed when he heard that. His previous nervousness and affected state of mind seemed to have calmed down all of a sudden. Let's compete in healing phase with damaged roots? Cheng Rui answered very quickly, and Lin Yuan couldn't help but raise his brows. It seemed like Cheng Rui was adept at healing phase with damaged roots and believed that he would have a higher chance of winning in this competition. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so eager to make his choice. Shi Cha clapped her hands 3 times and said indifferently, "Then as you wish." Soon 2 black dog-like fays were carried up. The 2 dog-like fays were half a meter long and had pointy ears. However, there were plenty of teeth protruding from their mouths, making them look abnormally sharp. Lin Yuan recognized that they were 2 violent blood terror wolf cubs that were still in the infant stage. It could be considered a very rare fay. The violent blood terror wolf was a powerful platinum fay, and its cubs would be at silver at birth. These 2 violent blood terror wolf pups had only been born a few months ago, and their origin sources had been damaged. While looking at their dying state, Lin Yuan carefully observed the 2 violent blood terror wolf cubs. Although they were quite far away, Lin Yuan could still see that their eyes were so swollen that they could barely open. There were also a lot of black scabs in his sharp ears. The various symptoms undoubtedly indicated that the source of the injuries to the 2 violent blood dire wolf cubs were in their heads. It was extremely likely that their brains, which were protected by their hard skulls, had been damaged. The brain was the source of intelligence, so it was extremely difficult for B species fays to treat brain injuries. Before becoming a C-rank spirit chi professional, if he was in the pure land of bliss in the spirit lock spatial zone and tried his best to save the violent blood terror wolf's cub, he would need to spend several days. Conservatively speaking, it would take at least 2 days and 2 nights. After becoming a C-rank spirit chi professional, Lin Yuan still did not know to what extent his fey enhancement ability had reached. However, the time needed to heal this violent blood dire wolf cub would definitely not be as long as before. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw that Cheng Rui and Shi Cha had already started to move. Both of them were using crystal vessels to mix spiritual ingredients according to a certain ratio. Both of them were very proficient, but there were subtle differences. Lin Yuan could clearly feel that Shi Cha's speed of mixing spiritual ingredients was faster than Cheng Rui's, but it wasn't obvious. Different types of spiritual ingredients were added into the crystal bottles in an orderly manner. Whenever a new spiritual ingredient was added, the medicinal liquid in the crystal bottles would vibrate and have different changes. As they matched, Lin Yuan could see that although they were both concocting spiritual ingredients, Cheng Rui and Shi Cha's concocting spiritual ingredients were different. Just by looking at the color and state, it was obvious. The medicinal liquid that Kai Cha had mixed was an amber liquid that was as viscous as honey. As for Cheng Rui's spiritual ingredient, it was a dark green, non-transparent spirit liquid that was constantly bubbling. The time that the 2 of them took to mix the spirit liquid was neither long nor short, and it took around 3 to 4 hours. Lin Yuan observed carefully and had a rough understanding of the creation master's methods. As compared to this method of mixing spiritual ingredients, his method was more direct and simple. However, the ability of Lin Yuan's simpler and more direct method was linked to his spirit chi level. Therefore, Lin Yuan only needed to increase his spirit chi occupation rank to increase his creation master's methods. If Lin Yuan wanted to increase his spirit chi occupation rank, he could only obtain it by enhancing phase. This allowed Lin Yuan to increase his creation master's ability and his spirit chi occupation rank to become the same thing. Cheng Rui was originally mixing spiritual ingredients in an orderly manner. During the mixing process, Cheng Rui suddenly placed the crystal vessels on the platform and looked up at Shi Cha, who was mixing spiritual ingredients. His mouth revealed a profound smile. Lin Yuan saw Cheng Rui circulating the spiritual power in his body. While circulating the spiritual power, Cheng Rui's face revealed a painful expression, and it was almost distorted. After a short moment, a bulge appeared under the skin of Cheng Rui's sleeve, and it was heading towards the web between Cheng Rui's thumb and index finger. The bulge was getting bigger and it looked like something was going to drill out. Cheng Rui let out a stifled groan, and a worm that was around 5 to 6 centimeters long and looked like a shrunken spine had drilled out. Cold Moon frowned and looked at Elder Du with a cold voice. "This is the source-type life form, spine goo?" Elder Du nodded in response. Lin Yuan didn't expect for the thing that drilled out from the flesh to be Cheng Rui's contracted source-type life form. This source-type life form resided in the contractor's body and would cause extreme pain to the contractor when it was activated. Since Cheng Rui chose to contract such a source-type life form and summoned it during the duel, it must be able to turn the tide of the duel. From the looks of it, there weren't many spiritual ingredients left that Shi Cha had selected. This meant that the spirit fluid that Kai Cha required was about to be completed. In contrast, half of the spiritual ingredients on Cheng Rui's table had yet to be used. Elder Du didn't expect Cheng Rui to casually summon this source-type life form, spine goo. He sighed and said, "Cheng Rui's grandfather is Cheng Wu, and this source-type life form, spine goo, was separated from Master Cheng Wu's gold ring spine goo." When mentioning Cheng Wu's name, Elder Du's expression didn't look too good. Elder Du's words entered Lin Yuan's ears. Lin Yuan might not know who Cheng Wu was, but Elder Du was a Class 4 creation master, and only those pinnacle Class 4 creation masters who were just a step away from becoming Class 5 creation masters could be addressed as a master. Chapter 96. Song Yu looked deeply at Old Man Du and said, "It seems like Cheng Wu is really working in the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association. It is such a major matter, but I don't see the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association announcing it." Old Du quickly said, "Elder Cheng has just arrived at the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association and doesn't have any plans to be the vice president. When Elder Cheng has a plan, we will announce it." Song Yu was rather surprised that Cheng Wu, a pinnacle Class 4 creation master, would actually choose to be the vice president of the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association. But after thinking about it for a while, Song Yu understood. Since he knows that he doesn't have the chance to become a Class 5 creation master, he should plan for the Cheng family's descendants. But if Cheng Rui truly has the talent, why would Cheng Wu allow Cheng Rui to form a contract with the source-type life form, spine goo? Song Yu's words were very cold, but they made Elder Du feel awkward. He didn't know what to say. Lin Yuan listened to Cold Moon and Elder Du's conversation in a daze. However, he also knew that it was very inappropriate for him to ask rashly. Suddenly, Song Yu turned to look at Lin Yuan. "Lin Yuan, do you know what a source-type spine goo is?" Lin Yuan shook his head. Song Yu saw the curiosity in Lin Yuan's eyes. After forming a contract with a source-type life form like the spine goo, it won't be stored in the spiritual spatial zone like other phase. Once the spine goo is contracted by the contractor, it will reside in the contractor's spine and hollow out a portion of the spine to build its nest. Forming a contract with the spine goo will essentially damage the contractor's vitality. Therefore, the creation master that forms a contract with the spine goo will never reach Class 5. Lin Yuan was dumbfounded. There was actually a source-type life form like the spine goo. But thinking about it, his red thorn was also very special. It was just that red thorn's uniqueness was that it needed a blood contract and did not have a biological template. It needed the contractor to specify its evolution. Red thorn's uniqueness allowed Lin Yuan to quickly accept a unique source-type life form like the spine goo. Seeing that Lin Yuan had digested what she had said, Song Yu continued. "The spine goo might be able to destroy the contractor's vitality potential within a certain range, but it is an absolute treasure for a creation master. The spine goo can rapidly synthesize a large amount of spiritual ingredients that the host devours and form a concentrated spirit fluid in the body. When concocting spiritual ingredients, the spine goo can devour the spiritual ingredients and accumulate them within the body, allowing it to maximize the effects of the spiritual ingredients. But there is also a flaw. When fusing spiritual ingredients like this, the spine goo's spirit fluid will be consumed. After the fusion, the contractor will have to consume a large amount of spiritual ingredients to nourish. Otherwise, if the spine goo doesn't absorb enough spirit fluid, it will gnaw on the spinal cord in the spine." At this moment, Cold Moon changed her usual cold temperament and explained everything that Lin Yuan did not know in detail. Lin Yuan finally knew what the spine goo was used for. However, after knowing about it, Lin Yuan's impression of the spine goo worsened. A contracted Fae would treat the Fae as a partner and not like the spine goo, which would turn its spine into the Fae's residence. It was certainly good to cut off one's own meat to feed the eagle, but that was based on the foundation of cutting off one's own meat. In Lin Yuan's opinion, it was a very foolish thing to cut off one's own meat to feed the eagle. At this moment, Cheng Rui had already activated the spine goo and was rapidly devouring the spiritual materials. His efficiency immediately increased. In just a few minutes he had almost caught up to Shicha's speed. When Cheng Rui summoned the spine goo and let out a groan, Shicha had already looked at Cheng Rui with dissatisfaction. When creation masters were concocting spiritual ingredients, it was a taboo to disturb them. Since the start of the competition, Sangyu had already used her spiritual power to isolate the stage from the outside world. She was afraid that it would affect the competition. However, Cheng Rui had actually affected his opponent while concocting a fei. Shicha was about to berate him when she saw Cheng Rui summon the spine goo. Shicha was a little helpless and speechless. At first I didn't intend to use feis as support, but since you used it I'll use it too. Shicha also circulated her spiritual energy and summoned a plant that looked like a pitcher plant. Shicha poured the spirit liquid that she had concocted, but had yet to purify it, into the plant that looked like a pitcher plant. Shicha then continuously poured her spiritual energy into the fei. After a series of actions, Cheng Rui and Shicha concocted the spirit liquid at almost the same time. However, Cheng Rui's spirit liquid was converted from the spine goo's abdomen, while Shicha's spirit liquid was directly poured from the pitcher plant. The two of them fed the spirit liquid to the violent blood terror wolf pups, which had severe head injuries. In just a few minutes, the two violent blood terror wolf pups were healed at the same time. The two violent blood terror wolf pups immediately became active and would occasionally use their teeth to bite on the cage, producing cracking sounds. Even when the violent blood terror wolf pups were still very irritable. After the end of the competition, it seemed like it was a draw. However, Cheng Rui spoke first. I won because my violent blood dire wolf has leveled up from silver 3 to silver 4. After speaking, Cheng Rui reached for the purplish-red blood of the diamond snake species fei. However, before his hand could touch the bottle of the diamond-level snake-type spirit beast's blood, he suddenly heard a mocking laugh. You won after healing the violent blood terror wolf pup and evolving it from silver 3 to silver 4? Why don't you see that my violent blood terror wolf has evolved from elite to flawless? After speaking, Shicha bowed to Cold Moon and returned to the four corners of the palace hall. Shicha's words froze Cheng Rui, and his face turned the color of a pig's liver. Elder Du originally wanted to step forward to console Cheng Rui, but he didn't expect Long Tao to be the first to clap and laugh heartily. Truly spectacular. Cheng Rui's eyes were bloodshot from the clapping and turned blood red as he glared at Long Tao. Long Tao didn't mind. He lifted his feet and patted the non-existent dust off his boots. It was as though he was casually sweeping Cheng Rui's gaze away. Long Tao, you and I are irreconcilable. Long Tao didn't bother about the enraged Cheng Rui and ignored Cheng Rui's ruthless words. Just as Cheng Rui was about to flare up, a bone-chilling pressure nearly froze him in place. Cheng Rui couldn't stand steadily and was about to kneel on the ground. Elder Du hurriedly stepped forward to support Cheng Rui and said to Sangyu, Envoy Cold Moon, Cheng Rui didn't mean to be presumptuous in the Radiant Moon Palace. This is Cheng Rui's first time here, so he doesn't know the rules. Sangyu's aura instantly rose as she spoke in a cold voice. Even if he doesn't dare to be impudent, he has already been impudent. You were the one who told him to do so in the Radiant Moon Palace? Or did you not even teach him the Radiant Moon Palace's rules when you brought him here? Old Man Du broke out in a cold sweat. For the past 10 years, the Moon Empress had been biding her time, and the two Moon Envoys had been cultivating in the Leaning Moon Mountain, rarely going out. But how could he forget Emissary Cold Moon's temper? Marquis Jing Shi, one of the nobles of the capital, was insufferably arrogant 15 years ago and disrespected Blue Moon Emissary. His legs were broken by the Moon Emissary, and he had been sitting in a wheelchair ever since. That night, the Jing Shi Marquis's residence was covered in frost. The house of the Marquis was split in half. No one knew what had happened. With Marquis Jing Shi's high-tier king stage strength, his legs should have recovered long ago. However, he did not dare to stand up from his wheelchair. Chapter 97. Marquis Jing Shi was extremely powerful in the capital back then. Even among other king-class experts, many had been rejected by Marquis Jing Shi. With a Fantasy 3 Pinnacle Diamond Desert Lion and the old Marquis behind him, almost no one of his age dared to compete with him. However, after the arrogant Marquis Jing Shi drank wine at the banquet, his words carried a bit of disrespect towards Blue Moon Envoy. After that, he openly provoked them. As a result, the bones in his legs were frozen to the point of almost shattering. How miserable was that? Old Du quickly said. Envoy Dark Moon, how could I dare not teach him the rules of the Radiant Moon Palace? Qing Rue is stupid and didn't understand. I'll bring Qing Rue back and teach him a harsh lesson. I'll teach him the rules of the Radiant Moon Palace. As Old Man Du spoke, his back was already soaked in cold sweat. As a Class 4 Creation Master, Elder Du might be considered outstanding among the Class 4 Creation Masters, but he was still a long way from becoming a pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master. As for Class 5 Creation Masters, because they were already at the Class 4 Creation Master position, they didn't even dare to think about the Class 5 Creation Master level. Among the King Class experts, his combat strength was far inferior to a Creation Master's. He had barely reached the King tier. His status in the Radiant Moon Palace was not high enough. If he said something wrong again, he might be crippled and thrown off the Leaning Moon Mountain. Song Yu had rarely appeared in the past decade, but the title of Ironman Triathlon had always been remembered by many people because of the incident with Marquis Jingshi. Triathlons didn't refer to athletic ability, but to Song Yu's style of doing things. Iron wrists, iron fists, a heart of stone. The bone-piercing chill on Song Yu's body didn't diminish. In an instant, a pair of spinning frost flowers appeared in Song Yu's eyes. In an instant, Old Man Du felt as if he had been buried under a glacier of 10,000 years. Previously, Elder Du was still supporting Qing Rue, but now Elder Du couldn't even stand steadily. At this moment, the blood-red color in Qing Rue's eyes dissipated. Sensing Old Du's trembling, Qing Rue suddenly felt like he was out of his wits and helpless. In a panic, Qing Rue cried out in a sobbing tone. My grandfather is Qing Wu, a pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master. Qing Rue shouted very loudly, as if he was trying to give himself some courage by shouting. When Song Yu heard this, her usually expressionless face suddenly curled up into a smile. In an instant, her eyes were filled with frost. As soon as Qing Rue shouted that his grandfather was Qing Wu, Old Man Du knew that something bad had happened. In the Radiant Moon Palace, let alone your grandfather who is a pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master, even Class 5 Creation Masters like Bamboo Monarch and Chef Supreme are here. Even Song Yu might not let this matter go. The Moon Empress had always been domineering, and the two Moon Envoys represented the Moon Empress' will. A pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master was ultimately still a Class 4 Creation Master. There was a heavenly chasm between a Class 4 Creation Master and a Class 5 Creation Master. Class 4 Creation Masters could only nurture phase at the Fantasy V transformation, while Class 5 Creation Masters were already qualified to ascend to the Myth rank. When Lin Yuan saw this tense atmosphere, he actually felt his heart in his throat for a moment. Song Yu's aura might not be directed at him, but Lin Yuan could still feel a pressure that came from the soul dimension. This kind of oppressive feeling was like a person in the clouds looking down on you, making you feel like you couldn't resist. Qing Rue's ability as a creation master was considered outstanding, especially after using the spine goo. He had basically reached the standard of a Class 3 creation master. With the current Lin Yuan, Qing Rue was considered a formidable foe. However, after seeing Qing Rue's earlier performance, Lin Yuan no longer treated Qing Rue as a formidable foe. All of a sudden, Song Yu turned to look at Lin Yuan and asked, "What do you think? What do you think will happen to those who speak rudely?" Lin Yuan first looked at Old Man Du, who was standing there with cold sweat. Lin Yuan didn't know why, but he felt as though he saw Elder Ning's shadow on Old Man Du. They were both creation masters that enhanced phase, rescued phase, and helped spirit chi professionals break through phase limitations. Looking at Song Yu's expression, if Old Man Du and Qing Rue didn't give an explanation, they wouldn't be able to leave. Lin Yuan looked at Song Yu and noticed that she was looking at him seriously. Lin Yuan still didn't know what to say. However, Lin Yuan didn't wish for Old Man Du to die just because of a few words. Since Song Yu asked, Lin Yuan followed his heart and said, "Those who speak rudely should naturally be punished. Those who speak rudely should naturally be punished, but there's a reason for it. For example, Elder Du spoke rudely because he wanted to protect Qing Rue, so Elder Du's actions were essentially to protect the younger generation." Song Yu's aura suddenly lowered, and Lin Yuan could feel the pressure that Old Man Du and Qing Rue had felt earlier. Lin Yuan's forehead was already covered in sweat. However, Lin Yuan had already grasped 3 willpower runes. Willpower runes might not be able to increase Lin Yuan's spiritual energy, but they could increase Lin Yuan's spiritual defense to a certain extent. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't look like he was in a sorry state, and Song Yu was a little surprised. Song Yu spoke. "Then you mean that it is all Qing Rue's fault, so it is enough to punish him alone?" Since Lin Yuan had already spoken, he simply shook his head after hearing Tsang Yu's words. When I look at a person, I don't look at how high a person's abilities can bring him. I look at how deep a person's mistakes can make him fall. Cheng Rui's words have already implicated the people on his side and the elders in his family. When he returns, I don't know how many punishments are waiting for him. Therefore, why not let old man Du bring Cheng Rui back to discipline him and also tell Cheng Rui's elders about Cheng Rui's mistakes today? Lin Yuan was silent for 3 seconds before speaking again. Creation Masters are very precious resources in the Radiance Federation. Therefore, even if you want to punish them, you might as well punish them to heal more phase. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, he felt Tsang Yu's aura suddenly withdraw. Lin Yuan looked at Tsang Yu again and realized that she was looking at him with a somewhat different gaze. Her gaze was actually a little more approachable and intimate. Tsang Yu looked at Lin Yuan and didn't expect this young genius to be so kind. He was using all kinds of reasons just to hope that she wouldn't be too harsh on him. In the end, Lin Yuan's reason was also in consideration for the Radiance Federation. From Lin Yuan's information, Tsang Yu felt that Lin Yuan should be a young fellow who had almost never received any favors from the Radiance Federation. His wandering and miserable life in the information actually made his heart look toward the light. This was a very rare and precious quality. Tsang Yu had asked Lin Yuan earlier because she wanted to test him and see what he would say. There was no standard answer to this question. However, Lin Yuan's answer brought Tsang Yu a pleasant surprise. Just as Tsang Yu withdrew her aura, old man Du had already pulled Cheng Rui to thank Lin Yuan. However, when Cheng Rui lowered his head to thank Lin Yuan, the blood-red color in his eyes that had dissipated due to fear became even redder. Chapter 98. Cold Yu ignored Elder Du, who was bowing to thank Lin Yuan, and walked straight to the platform. He said to Elder Meng, who had been watching the show, "After coming to the Radiant Moon Palace to receive the Moon Empress reward, let's return." 3 days later, another 20 drops of silver stamen gold luster Cassia's nectar will be delivered to Elder Meng. I have let Elder Meng see a joke in the Radiant Moon Palace for no reason. Elder Meng hurried forward and bowed to Tsang Yu. Elder Du's condition had given Elder Meng a fright. If he had spoken rudely, he would have ended up the same way. However, the 20 drops of nectar from the silver stamen gold luster Cassia made Elder Meng so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. "Emissary Tsang Yu, I'll take Long Tao back now." Elder Meng had already figured out what was going on. Just by looking at Tsang Yu's attitude toward Lin Yuan, one could see that Long Tao and Cheng Rui were merely supporting characters. He had obtained so many good things on this trip, which was more than enough to make up for his disappointment. Just as Elder Meng was about to leave with Long Tao, he turned around and saw Long Tao standing with Lin Yuan. "Thank you for restoring my spiritual power. Otherwise, I would have made a fool of myself." Lin Yuan replied with a laugh. "It's just a small matter." When Long Tao heard and saw Lin Yuan smile, he couldn't help but smile. "Brother, if you're eating anywhere in the capital, don't forget to find me for a drink." Senior Meng led Long Tao down the Leaning Moon Mountain. Old man Du hurriedly apologized to Tsang Yu before dragging Cheng Rui down the Leaning Moon Mountain. As they descended the mountain, Old man Du purposely waited for a while before continuing to lead Cheng Rui down the mountain. This was because Elder Du did not have the face to face Elder Meng, who had gained quite a lot. In the Radiant Moon Palace, apart from Tsang Yu and Lin Yuan, there were only the tea attendants and Ling Xiao, who were looking at Lin Yuan curiously from the 4 corners of the street. Ling Xiao stood there and looked at Lin Yuan with a calm gaze, but his heart was filled with deep joy. Ling Xiao could see how special Tsang Yu and Mystic Moon were to Lin Yuan. He could also see that Tsang Yu was protecting Lin Yuan. Therefore, there was at least a 70% chance that Lin Yuan would be chosen as a disciple by the Moon Empress. Tsang Yu walked to Lin Yuan's side and said, "She wants you to witness the pinnacle standard of the Radiance Federation's younger generation, be it in terms of creation masters or spirit chi occupations. Walk to the back of the palace hall and go through the long corridor to the inner palace. The Moon Empress will be waiting for you there." Lin Yuan didn't expect that those 2 exciting matches were actually prepared for him. When Lin Yuan had first arrived, he had not been sure why he was the only one who did not need to compete. However, after seeing the standards of the previous 2 matches, Lin Yuan knew that his strength was not enough. Walking along the corridor, Lin Yuan felt a little apprehensive. He was about to meet one of the Radiance Federation's only 3 Class 5 creation masters, the Moon Empress. Lin Yuan would never have thought that he would be able to interact with such a pinnacle expert at such a close distance. Lin Yuan was very smart. When he had ascended the Leaning Moon Mountain with Mystic Moon, he had also paid attention to the conversation between Elder Meng, Elder Du, and Ling Xiao. He knew that his objective for coming here was the great benefit that Elder Ning had mentioned, which was the possibility of becoming the Moon Empress disciple. With this thought, Lin Yuan became even more nervous. However, Lin Yuan didn't know that there was another person in the inner palace hall who was even more nervous than him. At this time in the back hall, a woman was arranging brocade boxes one after another on a shelf next to the lotus pond, muttering to herself. 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. These 100 gifts should be enough, right? I don't know how to be a master. Will it make me seem a little stingy to give my precious disciple 100 greeting gifts? A woman in a moon-colored robe was holding her chin while looking at the brocade boxes on the shelf. She was hesitating if she should take out more treasures. If others were to see this, even Cold Moon and Mystic Moon would be shocked. Was this still the Moon Empress who was as cold as the lonely moon? Any one of these 100 brocade boxes would shake the Radiance Federation, but there was actually someone who felt that it was not enough. When the Moon Empress looked at these brocade boxes, she couldn't help but recall the time when she was young and interacted with her master. With this thought, the Moon Empress was so angry that her teeth were itching. Apart from teaching her knowledge as a creation master, that old bastard would bring her to all kinds of dangerous trials. He was very fierce. However, his master, that old scoundrel, had passed away when he had become a Class 3 creation master. This matter had always been a pain in the Moon Empress' heart. After so many years, the pain had been erased and turned into yearning. The Moon Empress had never accepted a disciple before. Now that she was suddenly going to accept one, she actually lost her sense of propriety. However, when she thought of the old bastard who had taught her, she decided that she would definitely pamper her disciple. Ever since the Moon Empress had the intention to accept a disciple, she was already prepared to accept the identity of a master in her life. Therefore, when Lin Yuan appeared and the Moon Empress understood Lin Yuan's information, she might not have said it, but she had a plan in her heart. With this thought in mind, and since Lin Yuan had fought his way up the Leaning Moon Mountain, the Moon Empress had used her spiritual energy to sense Lin Yuan's every word and action. The Moon Empress had always been very satisfied until Cold Moon tested Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's defense deepened the Moon Empress' impression of Lin Yuan. It made Lin Yuan's image in the Moon Empress' heart even more three-dimensional. Originally, the Moon Empress had planned to test Lin Yuan yesterday, but she was now busy thinking about how to pamper her disciple. Lin Yuan's footsteps were getting closer, and the Moon Empress could already hear them clearly. The Moon Empress took a deep breath and restored her usual demeanor. When Lin Yuan arrived at the inner palace, he was stunned by the scene. The inner palace's scene couldn't be described as luxurious, but it didn't refer to how many expensive decorations there were. It referred to how many powerful and precious fays there were in this house. The inner palace was like a fairyland, and there were dozens of unknown lotus flowers blooming in the huge lotus pond. Using true data, none of the lotus fays' quality was lower than diamond. However, before Lin Yuan could pay attention to these, he was attracted by a figure in a moon-colored robe. Just as Lin Yuan didn't know how to greet her, the Moon Empress walked forward and asked, "Do you have any requirements to be my disciple?" The Moon Empress was originally thinking about how to speak more cordially. However, when she really opened her mouth, it immediately became something that she needed. After speaking, the Moon Empress felt a little regretful. Didn't I seem too anxious to accept a disciple? Lin Yuan did not expect that the Moon Empress, a Class 5 creation master, would actually say such a thing after seeing him. However, Lin Yuan had already thought about it when he was walking just now. Even if he became the Moon Empress disciple, he still had to firmly walk on his path of being an expert. Moon Empress, I don't have any conditions to be your disciple, but I hope that I can walk my own path step by step and rely on my own efforts. Lin Yuan's words made the Moon Empress confused. In that case, wouldn't the 100 treasures that I prepared previously be in vain? Chapter 99. When Lin Yuan sat on the chair, his mind was in a daze. However, he quickly sorted out the things in his mind. He was very nervous when talking to the Moon Empress, but later on, he had a vague feeling that the Moon Empress was even more nervous than him. After chatting for a while, the Moon Empress didn't talk about accepting a disciple anymore. At this time, the sky was a little dark. The Moon Empress arranged for someone to bring Lin Yuan to stay in the pavilion in the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace. Lin Yuan looked at the furnishings in the room. There were plenty of orchids that emitted a faint fragrance. The orchid leaves were green, but they were as straight as the bones of the orchid. Among the lush orchid leaves, there was a small white flower that was blooming. Just looking at it would make one feel refreshed. If the Moon Empress wanted to accept him as a disciple, it was a little sudden for Lin Yuan, and he wasn't prepared at all. If the Moon Empress really wanted to accept a disciple, no one would reject it. However, Lin Yuan was different. Lin Yuan had pitifully few restraints since he was young. Apart from Chu Xi, the only one who could restrain him was Lu Jie, the retainer he had just taken in not long ago. There was an ancient saying that a teacher for a day was a father for life. The title of teacher was a deep restraint. It was also a kind of affection that could be attributed to kinship. The relationship between teacher and student was very important. Lin Yuan didn't have that many feelings for the Moon Empress right now, and it was more of respect. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't know how to deal with the Moon Empress when she suddenly called him teacher. While Lin Yuan was pondering, the Moon Empress was using her hands to gently stir the water in the lotus pond. At that moment, a few half-meter-long fish suddenly drilled out from under the lotus leaves. They were like peonies blooming in the water, and their tails were like skirts that were layered and graceful. If Lin Yuan saw these fish, he would be abnormally surprised because they were all spirit siphon goldfish. These spirit siphon goldfish had already grown to platinum in the lotus pond. The Moon Empress was stirring the water with her fingers, causing ripples. These spirit siphon goldfish came over to get close to the Moon Empress. As the Moon Empress stirred the water, her mind was thinking about her first meeting with Lin Yuan. The Moon Empress was very satisfied with Lin Yuan and admired him. In fact, after knowing what Lin Yuan had experienced since he was young, the Moon Empress still had some tender affection for him. However, the Moon Empress also knew that it was too easy for her to accept a disciple. The Moon Empress had always been domineering and handled relationships very simply. However, after today's conversation, the Moon Empress realized that accepting a disciple wasn't like how a creation master could evolve a fae in one go. The Moon Empress recalled the question she had casually asked Lin Yuan. What's the most important thing between master and disciple? The relationship between master and disciple is more important. However, Lin Yuan's answer made the Moon Empress start to think carefully. The Moon Empress was originally planning to accept Lin Yuan as her disciple today, but she didn't want to be in such a hurry now. Since the most important thing between a master and his disciple was their relationship, it needed to be accumulated over a long period of time. At that moment, the Moon Empress heard footsteps. Cold Moon walked into the inner palace and saw the Moon Empress fiddling with the water in the lotus pond as though she was thinking about something. At the same time, Lin Yuan was nowhere to be seen. Can it be that the Moon Empress isn't satisfied with Lin Yuan? Just as Cold Moon was guessing the Moon Empress' thoughts, she heard the Moon Empress ask softly, "Songyue, don't you think you should learn to look at things from the perspective of an ordinary person after standing at the top for so long?" The Moon Empress' words caused Songyu's cold expression to turn into one of astonishment. Songyu pondered for a moment before replying. "I think that after becoming a powerhouse, I have to consider things from the perspective of a powerhouse." Songyu's answer was what she was thinking. If a person wanted to become a powerhouse, he would have to cut his way through thorns and thorns, spend a lot of time and experience many hardships. Coupled with outstanding talent, it was possible for one to become a powerhouse. In this world, the strong have their own special rights. Why should they put down their pride and use the thinking of ordinary people to consider things? Wasn't it easier and more direct for the strong to consider things? The Moon Empress stood up, and the water in the lotus pond slid off her jade-like hands and returned to the lotus pond. Cold Moon saw the Moon Empress shake her head with a smile on her lips. "Your way of thinking is both right and wrong. Songyu, go find me a spiritual ingredient recipe book. Since we need to nurture our relationship when accepting a disciple, let's start with the simplest." Songyu's mouth was so wide open that she could almost swallow an egg. "What? I didn't hear wrongly, right? The Moon Empress actually wants to cook, and it is to nurture a master-disciple relationship with Lin Yuan. When has the Moon Empress ever cooked before? All of this is simply too fantastical. How is this the Moon Empress isn't satisfied with Lin Yuan? This is simply the Moon Empress being extremely satisfied with Lin Yuan." However, Songyu didn't understand why it was so complicated to accept a disciple. Wasn't it just a sentence from the Moon Empress? While Lin Yuan was being reserved and bored in the room, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He heard two crisp sounds coming from outside the attic that he lived in. "Lord Lin Yuan, We are under the Moon Empress orders to deliver a change of clothes and prepare the hot water for the pavilion's soup pond. Hearing the voices outside, Lin Yuan let the two in. He saw two young ladies with bright eyes and white teeth, and they were about the same age as him. Both of them were wearing light yellow robes. However, it was obvious that one of them was dressed more exquisitely, while the other one didn't dress much. The soup pond behind the pavilion was connected to an underground warm spring, and when it wasn't used, the spring's mouth would be sealed. When it was time to use it, the restriction on the mouth of the spring would be opened, and hot spring water of exactly 40 degrees Celsius would flow out. After the preparations were done, the delicately dressed young lady looked at Lin Yuan with sparkling eyes. She handed over the spirit chi clothing to Lin Yuan and asked softly, "What do you think? Lord Lin Yuan, do you need me to help you change and bathe?" Lin Yuan hurriedly shook his head. "I can do it myself." The exquisitely dressed girl's eyebrows were obviously a little disappointed. "Lord Lin Yuan, we will take our leave." The two girls came to the pavilion and gave it a simple clean. Lin Yuan observed that the two young girls, who were more exquisitely dressed, had been standing next to him the entire time and had been looking for topics to chat about. On the other hand, the unadorned young girl had done almost all the work. It was obvious that she had expended a lot of energy to remove the restrictions on the spring. These two women were both wearing light yellow robes. The Moon Empress had already given him a brief introduction of the deployment on Leaning Moon Mountain. These two women in light yellow robes should be the Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendants. These spirit attendants were all talented creation masters among the younger generation, and they were all young ladies. As spirit attendants, their statuses were already equal, but it was obvious that one was bullying the other earlier. Chapter 100. People might not be helpless in the pugilistic world, but they would still need to rely on their own capabilities to achieve what they could. Those with great capabilities would naturally do well, while those with weak capabilities would do poorly. However, to be selected as spirit attendants at this age meant that they were all talented individuals. Lin Yuan didn't expect such a situation. Lin Yuan didn't want to bathe in the hot spring, so he simply stood by the window of the pavilion. The pavilion's window was open, and the sky was faintly turning dark. A new moon was slowly rising. However, Lin Yuan didn't expect to see such a scene while standing by the window. The two spirit attendants that were helping to tidy up the pavilion were currently standing not far away from the pavilion and talking about something. As they weren't close, Lin Yuan couldn't see their expressions clearly. However, the wind blowing toward the pavilion carried their conversation to Lin Yuan's ears. If you dare to spread what I said to Lord Lin Yuan today, and I get punished, I will teach you a lesson." The young lady's voice had a threatening tone, and it wasn't as melodious as it was in the pavilion. "Jin Qi, what you said earlier was obviously not the Moon Empress' intention. When did the Moon Empress ask you to bathe and change clothes? What are your plans for making such a decision on your own?" Lin Yuan could vaguely see Jin Ling pushing when you don't have to care about my plans. If I can climb up to the Lord in this pavilion no matter what I become, it will be better than being a spirit attendant. If you don't want to improve, it's your own problem. It's not that I don't want to improve, but I know what I can do and what I can't do. Upon hearing this, an angry voice echoed, "You know what you can do and what you can't do? Then why did you damage your phase roots to save others? You spent half a year to recover, but during this half a year, we are already about to become Class 2 Creation Masters, while you are only a mid-class Class 1 Creation Master. You are so far behind and you will be selected for the Spirit Attendant test half a year later. You aren't even fit to stay on the Leaning Moon Mountain." The voice gradually faded away, and the wind carried all of it into Lin Yuan's ears. After hearing these voices, Lin Yuan felt as though he could feel the undetectable human nature hidden in the darkness. Human nature was hidden in the heart. Good or evil, who could truly open the heart and take a look? Lin Yuan closed the window and walked towards the hot spring. The hot spring bath washed away all the dust and fatigue on his body, but it still couldn't wash away the lead that covered his body. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Tsangyu walk in with a huge green jade bowl. "This is the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that the Moon Empress prepared for you. There are 2 bowls here and you only need to finish half of it. Drinking more would be a waste." With that, Tsangyu left. Even now, Cold Moon was still in a state of shock. She couldn't understand why the Moon Empress was treating Lin Yuan so well. Bestowing treasures was extremely common. Even if Tsangyu was bestowed with an extremely precious treasure, she would not feel this way. However, the Moon Empress was already putting in effort to cook for Lin Yuan. Such an action was self-evident. It proved that the Moon Empress really took Lin Yuan seriously and treated him as her disciple. A big bowl of amber-colored silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar was placed in front of Lin Yuan, but it didn't have any taste. Actually, it made sense. The more precious something was, the more reserved it would be at times. The silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar didn't have any smell because all the essence was locked in the nectar. Looking at this big bowl of nectar that was enough for 2 people, Lin Yuan's heart suddenly felt warm. It was as though he vaguely understood the Moon Empress' deep meaning. Since this nectar was no longer effective after drinking half of it, then the other half could only be prepared for the person closest to him. That person was Chu Ci. If there was only a small bowl of something that could cleanse the body's impurities and enhance one's constitution, Lin Yuan would probably leave half for Chu Ci. Lin Yuan would probably leave half for Chu Ci, but the Moon Empress had actually thought of this. Suddenly, an idiom popped up in Lin Yuan's mind. Love me, love my dog? However, Lin Yuan immediately shook his head. The Moon Empress didn't know Chu Ci, so there was naturally no such thing as love me, love my dog. Therefore, the reason she did this was because she was thinking for him. Suddenly, Lin Yuan had a feeling of being cared for by an elder. This feeling was salty and astringent. It made Lin Yuan think of his parents, Auntie Zhang and Uncle Li. These people had never asked for anything in return for their contributions. They had contributed from the bottom of their hearts. It was the same for the Moon Empress. Lin Yuan knew that he didn't have anything to repay the Moon Empress. It was obvious what kind of treasure the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar was from Elder Du and Elder Meng's reactions. Such a big bowl of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar had at least 500 drops. Lin Yuan might not be able to produce such a bowl of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar even if he worked hard for a few years. Moreover, there were only 2 silver stamen gold luster cassias in the world, and they were exclusive to the Moon Empress. All of this was because the Moon Empress wanted to be a master. Although she hadn't officially accepted him as a disciple, she was already doing it. This gave Lin Yuan an indescribable feeling. Was it warmth or was it touching? Or was it something else? In any case, in Lin Yuan's eyes, the Moon Empress wasn't just a Class 5 creation master that stood at the peak. She was a senior that would give him a trace of warmth whenever he thought of her. The silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar could wash away the impurities in the body and enhance one's constitution. Lin Yuan picked up the bowl of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar and drank half of it in one go. When the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar entered his throat, it had a rich sweetness that contained the sweet fragrance of osmanthus. When the nectar that wasn't too viscous entered his stomach, a bitterness that was unique to plants appeared at the base of his tongue. This bitterness appeared at the base of his tongue, and it immediately turned sweet. His mouth and tongue were once again filled with the fragrant sweetness of the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. Not long after drinking it, Lin Yuan suddenly felt his body heating up. His skin started to secrete a large amount of oil, and the color of the oil wasn't the normal yellow oil. Instead, it was brownish red with some black spots. When the oil appeared, Lin Yuan smelled an unbearable odor. Lin Yuan immediately entered the hot spring again, and under Lin Yuan's washing, the impurities were dissolved in the hot spring. It was fortunate that the hot spring's restriction was opened, and the hot spring was constantly flowing. Otherwise, the more he washed, the more impurities there were, and the hot spring would immediately have that extremely unpleasant smell. After washing for over 2 hours, Lin Yuan finally realized that his body wouldn't secrete these disgusting impurities anymore. These impurities were innately present in the human body, and when humans ate grains, these impurities would accumulate. When these impurities accumulated, ordinary people would suffer from some terminal illnesses. When these impurities accumulated for spiritual professionals, it would affect their bone frame, which was also the so-called cultivation speed. Lin Yuan circulated his spiritual power and realized that after he circulated his spiritual power circulation speed increased by at least 30%. This discovery made Lin Yuan abnormally surprised. But immediately after, Lin Yuan suddenly noticed his hand. Chapter 101. This novel will be published at noon today. Button would like to thank everyone for their support and companionship. As the author of this Beast Evolution Quotient, I can also be considered the parent of this book. I have a few words to say. First of all, I would like to thank the friends who have been recommending me and tipping me. I've been keeping an eye on them, and there are many readers whose names I feel are very familiar with. Here I would like to bow to all of you to express my gratitude. I'm really bowing. There have been many bumps along the way for this book, and the starting point has been changed to creation. This book was actually written after reading some novels and wanting to create a world of its own. The world is bigger, so sometimes I want to write in more detail. I'm not a newcomer. I've also written a 2D novel with 1.6 million words. Button writes very slowly. She has to work during the day, so she writes at home at night. It was quite difficult at first, but she slowly persevered. Because it's quite lonely when she writes alone. Slowly, the recommendation votes increased, and there were also many comments after that. Button would read it seriously regardless of whether it was good or bad. Slowly, I established a reader group, and after I gained some readers who supported me, I became even more determined to continue writing this book. After signing the contract, I also had a chance to test the waters. I would like to express my gratitude here. Button is a very easygoing person. I don't know what to say. In short, this novel is going to be published. Please support me. The story of this book is still long, so please give me your guidance. Also, just like other novels, I'm asking for recommendation votes, comments, evaluations, subscriptions, favorites, and monthly tickets. Aren't I greedy? QAQ. Thank you for your support. Yes, that's all. Chapter 102. Lin Yuan could see that this hand was white and slender, but it wasn't feminine. The bone structure was clearly defined and just right. Just looking at the palm, it was white with a tinge of red, and there were unique veins on the palm. Is this my hand? Lin Yuan had always been on the path of temperament, and his excellent temperament coupled with his sunny appearance made him look fresh and fresh. However, Lin Yuan's hand wasn't like this in the past. Lin Yuan had been an ordinary person for 18 years, and the arduous labor had caused his palm to grow some inconspicuous calluses. His body might have recovered after he could sense spirit qi, but the skinny Lin Yuan's body wasn't strong. But now, apart from this pair of hands, Lin Yuan realized that his body had also become meticulously sculpted. Is this the effect of the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar's cleansing of impurities and strengthening the bone frame? Everyone had their own unique genetic model after their parents gave birth to them. There would always be flaws in the growing genes, causing a person to not be able to completely evolve toward the genetic model. The silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar's essence was to cleanse the body's impurities and strengthen the bone frame. The nectar's energy would fill in the body's flaws and allow the body to evolve toward the perfect genetic model. After leaving the hot spring, the skin would automatically bounce off the water in the hot spring. The skin wouldn't be overly fair and would have a light honey color instead. Lin Yuan walked in front of the mirror and looked at it. He realized that the person in the mirror was still himself, but his appearance was more exquisite. The youthful aura that was mixed with the fragrance of grass and the warm sunlight formed a wonderful temperament. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh. He actually felt that the person in the mirror was really handsome. However, when he thought that the person in the mirror was himself, Lin Yuan couldn't help but shake his head. I'm not such a narcissistic person. For the next few days, Lin Yuan ate the Moon Empress' spiritual ingredients and delicacies in the Radiant Moon Palace. However, the Moon Empress didn't let Lin Yuan know. During the day, the Moon Empress would call Lin Yuan to her breeding room. She didn't teach Lin Yuan anything special and just let him see how she enhanced the phase. Lin Yuan watched very seriously. With the Moon Empress' display of techniques and the knowledge that genius had learned, Lin Yuan realized that the appropriate combination of spiritual ingredients could greatly assist the phase evolution. Lin Yuan's method might be far inferior to a proper creation master's, but he still benefited greatly. Upon seeing how serious Lin Yuan was, the Moon Empress was very happy. She displayed it very carefully and would even give him some pointers from time to time. Although they had only been in contact for a few days, they were no longer as distant as they had been in the beginning. Lin Yuan was slowly treating the Moon Empress as his master. The Moon Empress was also wholeheartedly treating Lin Yuan as her disciple. The Moon Empress realized that the relationship between master and disciple wasn't as simple as a form of address. After accepting the other party, they would really pour their heart and soul into it. During these few days, Lin Yuan realized that apart from the few vine birds that could be used as assistants in the Moon Empress breeding room, the Moon Empress didn't have any other vine birds. There was also a little rabbit that was always eating carrots. No matter how much it ate, it seemed as if it could not finish the carrots in its hands. Every time Lin Yuan wanted to hug it, the little bunny would dodge and scamper to other places to play by itself. On this day after the Moon Empress nurtured phase, she called Lin Yuan over to her side and asked, "Do you have any plans after this?" Lin Yuan listened to the Moon Empress question and thought for a moment before replying. I plan to open a shop in the capital next year. After some time, I will have to return to the Xia region to settle some matters. The Moon Empress nodded and replied. A creation master or spirit chi professional will have to experience many things along the way, such as exploring dimensional rifts, capturing phase in primeval forests, deserts and rivers. All of these have to be experienced, and coming to the royal capital is indeed a good choice. Lin Yuan nodded. This world was very big, so big that it seemed to have no boundaries. He was desperately trying to improve his strength so that he could have the ability to explore the world. However, Lin Yuan still had an ambition now, and that was to become a member of the Radiance 100 sequence. Therefore Lin Yuan spoke his mind. The Moon Empress let out a faint smile. Then you have to work hard. Since you want to compete for the Radiance 100 sequence, I have to tell you that the Radiance 100 sequence is just the beginning. The Radiance 100 sequence is just a seed to become a Radiance Envoy. This was the first time Lin Yuan had heard of a Radiance Envoy. He had never heard of it before, be it in the news or on Star Web. The Rain Empress looked at Lin Yuan and said, "That's right. There are only 5 Radiance Envoys, and they are the true steel-like backbone of the Radiance Federation's younger generation. Radiance Envoys will only be selected from the Radiance 100 sequence." After speaking, the Moon Empress pondered for a moment and continued, "The Radiance Federation is very big, but there is not only one Radiance Federation in this world. The Saint Dynasty Federation and the Crimson Dark Federation can compete with the Radiance Federation as equals. The 3 major federations exist side by side. There are also hundreds of small federations that are independent. The Radiance Envoys represent the competition between the Radiance Federation's younger generation and the major federation's younger generation." The Moon Empress' words shocked Lin Yuan. In this world, just the Radiance Federation alone was so big that it almost had no boundaries, but there were still 2 federations that could compete with the Radiance Federation. In addition to the hundreds of small federations, Lin Yuan really could not imagine how big this world's territory was. The Radiance Envoy was just a title, but it made Lin Yuan's blood boil. It was an honor and a mission at the same time. The responsibility that the Radiance Envoy shouldered was glorious and arduous. The Moon Empress patted Lin Yuan's shoulder with eyes full of encouragement and eagerness. Previously, the Moon Empress had asked Lin Yuan, and when Lin Yuan had expressed that he wanted to rely on himself for the road ahead, she had really had a headache. However, the Moon Empress was also proud of Lin Yuan's choice, as it was hard not to admire such a temperament. However, as a teacher, the Moon Empress would not be lacking in the things that she had to do. "I received news from the spirit guards. There is an anomaly in the Water Luster Forest, and the situation is still unclear. I will bring you there later to take a look." Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He had not seen much of the outside world, especially the mountains and forests. There were plenty of fays in the mountains and forests, and almost every piece of the mountains and forests had a fay ruling over an area. As such, ordinary people did not have the opportunity to enter. Now that there was a chance, Lin Yuan was rather excited. "You can go to the royal capital to take a stroll during these few days. Apart from the Radiance 100 sequence, if you have the idea, you can also create a guild-type club. A guild-type club can form its own 5-member team and participate in the guild competition. The top-ranked glory teams are not inferior to the Radiance 100 sequence. Many of the Radiance 100 sequence members are also members of some 5-member guild teams." It could be said that the Moon Empress had put in a lot of effort in teaching Lin Yuan. The number of words she had spoken to Lin Yuan over the past few days was even more than the Moon Empress's 2 months. Even if it was a small matter, the Moon Empress would explain everything in detail. When the words "create a guild club" flashed in Lin Yuan's mind, he was actually rather moved. Baiduan wanted to read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.